everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Tuesday, July 26th, and I'm your host, Natan Solomon. In today's show, we bring you some special interviews with some incredible people, so stay tuned. First, I'll start by bringing you the Techstrong news recap. In today's edition, we have some really interesting headlines, from Instacart technology to T-Mobile's recent settlement. The news was action-packed. Next, we bring you to JFrog's Yalla DevOps in Israel, where Alan interviewed Rory Preddy, the principal cloud advocate at Microsoft. In this interview, Alan and Rory discuss accessibility in the digital realm, what it means for companies around the world, and the challenges associated with it. Then, Alan interviewed Natalia Tushva, who is the CEO of Sternum. In this interview, they discuss how Sternum is rolling out the world's first free self-service license for IoT devices. We then bring you to KubeCon Cloud Native Con, where Alan interviewed David Safai. David is the CEO of Trilio, and in this interview they discuss Continuous Restore, which is Trilio's new capability that empowers users to replicate, restore, and migrate data in multiple clouds simultaneously. It seems like in today's episode we're bringing you all around the world, and in our next interview we're at RSA, where Alan met with George Gerchow, the CTO of Sumo Logic. In this discussion, they covered how Sumo Logic helps people build and secure microservices-based applications in the cloud. These are two of the best personalities in the tech industry, so be sure to check that conversation out. Next, we have episode 29 of DevOps Unbound. In this episode, Mitch is joined by Curtis O'Dell of Tricentis, Arun Mulchandani of Narwhal, Devani Lamas from Transposit, and Andrew Hughes from Trimext. In this chat, the group discusses how DataOps helps organizations speed up development, reduce the cost of deployment, and monitor their data's integrity. We then bring you part one of another episode of The Haunted Hacker with Mike Jones. In this edition, the host of the Barcode podcast joins Mike to talk about content creation, the industry, his beginnings, and more. Charlene then interviews Mark Bronner of Kroll and David Creed of Armis. Armis and Kroll recently agreed on a partnership, so Mark and David speak on what this partnership means for the two companies as well as for the industry and its consumers. Then, Mitch interviews Lance Knight, who is at Agile 2022 for this special conversation. Lance is the COO and president of Connect All, and they dove into the concepts of value stream management and value creation. To cap off the show, we have a 1-2 combo of View with Vizard. First, he's joined by Emily Arnott, who is the community relations manager of Blameless. Mike and Emily discuss what it takes to really build and deploy reliable applications. Next, Mike is joined by Matthew George, the CEO of VigiTrust. In this interview, they dive into why VigiTrust created an agnostic advisory board to wrestle with the major cybersecurity issues of today's industry. That's what we have coming up for you here on Techstrong TV. Let's get the show started. Enjoy.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
First in news, T-Mobile announced it will pay $350 million to customers affected by a data breach last August. The data breach, which included social security numbers, names, and information from driver's licenses, impacted approximately 80 million U.S. residents. In a Security and Exchange Commission filing on Friday, T-Mobile said the $350 million would be allocated to pay for costs of claims, legal counsel, and administering the settlement. Additionally, T-Mobile stated they plan on spending $150 million over the next 2 years to improve its security. Next, Google has fired Blake Lemoine, one of its engineers who said the company's artificial intelligence system has feelings. Last month, Lemoine made bold claims that Google's language technology, Lambda, is sentient. After sharing a conversation he had with the chatbot titled, "Is Lambda Sentient?" an interview, people around the world questioned if there were actually any foundation to these claims. Google quickly got out in front of this, putting Lemoine on leave and calling his claims wholly unfounded. Google also mentioned that it had worked with Lemoine for many months to clarify that Lambda isn't sentient. After a month of being on leave, Google decided to sever ties with Lemoine, and in a statement, Google said, "We wish Blake well." Despite Google's stance on the matter as well as expert opinions from across the industry, the chatbot's potential sentience is still up in the air for many people. In other news, a bill is making its way through the Senate that will boost semiconductor production in the United States. Supporters of the bill say that countries around the world are spending billions of dollars to draw chip makers, addressing a shortage that has plagued the entire industry. Semiconductor chips are one of the most important pieces of technology in today's world, as they are functional necessities for most of our technologies. With no clear end in sight, the bill would add $79 billion through grants and tax breaks for chip makers, motivating the building or expansion of chip plants across the country. Next, Instacart, an online grocery delivery service, now allows grocers from across 49 states and Washington, D.C. to accept electronic benefits transfer and supplemental nutrition assistance program payments online. This change can impact up to 30 million people across the United States who suffer from food insecurity. Grocers can use EBT SNAP payments through Carrot Payments, one of Instacart's platform solutions. With this change, grocers can now use EBT SNAP at over 60 grocery chains and approximately 8,000 stores nationwide. With many EBT recipients facing mobility challenges, the option of an online grocery delivery service helps create a pleasant shopping experience for all. In another consumption-related headline, tech is helping companies bring people their morning coffee. Around the world, an estimated 1 billion people drink coffee every day, and over 1/3 of these cups come from Brazilian coffee plants. Despite having such a vast supply, its annual crop dropped by almost a quarter due to a drought across its main coffee-growing regions, posing a crisis to the country's coffee industry. To mitigate the crisis, producers are turning to numerous technologies. For one, a coffee plant is using a computer app called CropWise Protector, which is linked to ground sensors and satellite imagery, giving farmers a visual analysis of the farm and granting them the ability to apply drip irrigation or pest control. They have also invented technologies for the coffee drying process, which allows farmers to actively monitor applied temperatures. Another huge farm has invested in semi-automated irrigation, which is improving productivity and output. Such technologies may prove to be revolutionary in the coffee farming field, altering a massive industry in a permanent way. On DevOps.com, we have an article discussing how Dynatrace has recently improved its analytical capabilities to allow for a digital experience monitoring. This recent change is in line with observability, a core tenet of DevOps, and with many companies building applications on interconnected microservices, observability is more important than ever. Dynatrace says that the changes will make it easier to track user journeys across these components and microservices. On Digital CXO, Insight Partners, a venture capitalist firm with investments in both AI and machine learning, gives insight to some of the problems that both these technologies face moving forward. Some of these problems include explainability, casualty, privacy, talent, and long-term vision. Since AI and machine learning are likely to influence many sectors, it's important to figure out how to overcome these problems. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article discussing Trend Micro's expanded container security integration with its Trend Micro Cloud One platform. This change is in part of their progression towards streamlining their development of cloud security services. As more companies delve deeper into the cybersecurity, they need solutions that minimize the disruption of the application development process while not compromising security. Trend Micro's new integration hopes to achieve just that. And that's what we have for you on our Techstrong News Recap.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, we're back at Yalla DevOps. I think there's some great sessions going on. There's beautiful lunch being served. And let me introduce you right here. You know that commercial, the most influential man in the world? The most important man in the world. The most influential person in cloud in the world as voted by... Analytica. We've got Rory Pretty, and Pretty means from the village. He's not sure what village he's from, but well, actually he's from the Microsoft village,
it's
right?
a small startup out of Seattle.
A small startup, you might have heard of them. They got something with the cloud now too, right?
Well, we saw that other people were doing the cloud, so we said, this is good stuff. Let's
me
do that.
Me too.
And then we did the gaming thing also. This was good stuff, and let's take the gaming.
Also, actually, I have a lot of those games. Anyway, all kidding aside, Rory Pretty is with Microsoft. He comes to us today. He lives in South Africa, but he's here for Yalla DevOps in Tel Aviv. Rory, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yep. So let's start off, give people a little, all kidding aside, your background. You do work with Microsoft, I think.
Well, yeah, so I am a 42-year-old male. I have brown hair. I have a black top and I have achondroplasia, dwarfism. Now, what I just did is a voice narration, because one of the things that I'm very passionate about at Microsoft is accessibility. And I'll tell you a bit of a secret. We actually are mandated, everyone at Microsoft, to spend 20% of our capacity on diversity and inclusion. So I take my 20%, actually more than 20%, and I become a advocate for Microsoft for accessibility. Now, accessibility is the design of products and services so that everyone can use them. It's not designing for just one disability, it's designing for everyone. Now, what is disability? Now, as part of my midlife crisis, I'm 42, so I started losing weight. And I was 65 kilos at the time, at the start of it, and I was 4'1". Now, for you Americans, that's 120 centimeters.
Yeah, that just screwed me all up.
So I bought one of those BMI scales, and you can see where this is going.
All right.
And I put in my height and my details there, and I jumped on the scale, and it said, okay, baby or man? I thought, oh my gosh, okay, this is not going to end well. So I put in baby, and the thing called me morbidly obese.
Morbidly obese.
Oh, who designed the system?
Look, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, but then I put in the tall man. It said, you know, like morbidly anorexic. So I thought, wait, this is terrible, because no one understands my own condition, and I felt disabled there. So that's how you do it. So you look at your design and products of services, and you make sure that people don't feel disabled. At the same time, we use AI hosted on Azure to take advantage of some incredible innovative services. We have something called Immersive Reader. Immersive Reader is you can use the Azure Cognitive Service. You can take a little button on any website and you pop it up there, and it creates I don't want to say the word Amazon Kindle, but a Kindle-like experience, and you can make it the reading comprehension very easily. Because neurodiversity is also very dear to us, to be able to help people with reading comprehension. You go to Microsoft Word, you click on check accessibility, it'll go in and it'll analyze your picture and say this is the alternative text for it, but it uses Azure Cognitive Services in the background to go in there and scan that in for you, and then it'll add the alt text for you though. So even though I'm an accessibility advocate for Microsoft, I'm also a cloud advocate, because they go hand in hand.
These are great examples. So first of all, I got to tell you something. That example of where you yourself felt disabled or you had a disability is to me fascinating, right? Because that really brings it home. Look, because you didn't fit into any of these preconceived boxes that we had. And I never thought of it like that.
You can code towards the box, but it's a different type of box. So we call it inclusive design. And it's a very old paradigm that goes all the way back to the 60s, when computing systems were the size of a factory. So for example, if you have an amputee and the amputee actually doesn't have use of their arm, they're in the same spectrum as someone who may have fallen off their moped, GoPed. You know, one of those scooters that they seem to be obsessed
all over the place.
Nearly wiped me off the planet a couple of times. Mm-hmm. But you're in the same spectrum also as a newborn, a parent with a newborn, because you're cradling the newborn in your hand though. Now, if you go to your stakeholders and you say, I want a coder for the person with the amputee, they say, okay, the US Center for Statistics says there's only 26,000. But when you look at the person who fell off their moped and the new parent, there's 22 million. So then it starts to make sense. Then we look at, everyone who has accessible requirements, and there's 1 billion people out there with accessible requirements, and their friends and family and those who are financially involved with them, it's 3.5 billion. It's half the world. And for example, the silver generation, the over 70s, they have the most disposable income out of anyone though. So then you take that idea that you have to code and you extend it over your product design then, and you use AI to cater for and reach people. At the same time, you use DevOps to say, wait a second, my system is not acting accessible, and you use the GitHub Actions. We have a GitHub Actions called Accessibility Insights. You can go download it completely free. And then you can say there's a stop gate there, it's not really accessible, and then rinse and repeat and use that agile process to go in and make sure that nothing gets through that quality gate. And that's, I love your DevOps.com kind of background here, but that really is, so you can pair the two, you can pair AI, accessibility, and DevOps together to make sure that everyone in every organization is empowered to do more.
I love this. Here's my issue. if everyone could listen to what you just said, internalize it and live it, we'd have a much more accessible world. I think for many organizations who aren't as affluent or as community-minded, let's say, as Microsoft, accessibility to them means complying like with 509 kind of nonsense.
Or the EU Parliament of Direct.
Or the different variations around the world. And this is, I come from security. This was a major problem with security compliance. People started doing compliance for compliance sake, not compliance for security's sake when it was security compliance. And it's the same thing with accessibility. If we do accessibility to comply with the letter of a law or a statute or a regulation, but not to truly understand, as you said, it's not just the amputee who doesn't have use of this hand. It's the mother carrying the newborn. It's the person who took a header off their scooter here in the streets of Tel Aviv. That you got to understand, you got to care about the people and understand it's more than just a regulation. The regulations, for most part, are always least common denominator, lowest bar.
That's why you should hire people who have accessible needs. Because there's three different types of people. There's the people who need you to design your products for, your customers. There's the people who design your products, and then there's the allies.
Right.
And you want the allies, the people who are not necessarily who have accessibility requirements, but you want the people to work closely to those individuals who have accessible needs, because I guarantee you, if I had the opportunity to say go or no go, because of my accessible needs, it would mean a lot to me as my life's purpose to say no go. And then you hire that. We have an inclusive hiring process that you bring those allies and those advocates inside your organization, and they do more for your organization than anyone. Because I agree, from the outside you've got stick or carrot, and the carrot is really inclusive design, more revenue, and the stick is the compliance side.
Right.
But the secret sauce is making your organization with inclusive hiring.
Yeah.
And getting you to be the actual, your human capital, which is most important for any organization to be invested in the process.
I love it. All right, let's come back to what else you said, because I want to kind of hammer this home with the audience. The three elements here. We have AI, DevOps. What was the third?
That would be accessibility. Cloud. So cloud, but...
No, but these all... So in other words, these are three elements that help you make for successful accessibility.
Yes. So there will be cloud-based products and services. It would be one of the things that we really, really are proud of is Azure Copilot, that allows you to code in any language at any time and explains your code. And we have GitHub code spaces. I did a talk in front of the MOD, the Military of Defense organization, one of our huge customers in Israel, and I showed them how I never left the browser to go all the way process for accessible there. And I designed an application, popped it onto a Kubernetes cluster, pushed it through there, did code QL for CVE scanning, and then right at the end popped it into a container app and made an accessible website through that, never leaving the browser once. And even debugging my Docker container right there inside the CodeSpaces browser.
I love that. You're telling the truth here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's impressive. That's impressive.
Developers really have always been an undemocratized bunch of...
a mob.
A mob, yes. And now that we're slowly but surely democratizing things that they didn't have access to, an IDE, code scanning, an AI assistant, accessibility, we are now the cool kids. Not only the cool kids, but we are the decision makers.
Yes.
If you go to anyone here and you say, how important is a developer to the decision making of your company, they'll say, critical to that. So it's the same with accessibility in cloud, and Microsoft understands that. That's why I'm a developer advocate, because I go to where the developers are, and I use a Mac, I use Chrome, and I'm a Java developer. Because at the end of the day, not everyone wears the same hat. Others, like myself, prefer Chrome, Mac, and Java. And you need to meet the developers where they are, though, because it's like their mother tongue. Yeah. You can't expect someone to speak a different language when they're fluent and they're happy where they are.
Absolutely. Rory, this is delightful. For our audience, maybe this is their first impression of you. How could they follow you? How could they hear more?
Okay, so I'm on the tweeters on @RoryPreddy. So RoryPreddy. I'm also on the LinkedIn's. It's a little company we also...
also a Microsoft.
Yes.
Those people, they got their hands in a lot of pies there.
Or LinkedIn's fabulous, because LinkedIn is a great place because it actually gives you the ability to make meaningful connections, but also you can actually do introductions to other people,
Yes.
and which I love about that.
I'll tell you something interesting about LinkedIn. It's my own personal experience. I thought everybody in the world goes to LinkedIn. Everybody.
800 million people.
But I read a thing that it's primarily aimed at those in the technology world. That when you go outside of the technology, and it's me living in my own bubble, that when you go outside the technology world, not everyone is on LinkedIn.
So I would say technology is also including in fintech, insurance, mining. So anywhere that they need to really be connected on a non-organic measure, though. So non-organic means that I need to form a connection to you digitally. And definitely in fintech, definitely in insurance, it's an incredible thing because fintech pivots on technology.
Yeah. Hence the tech in
Yes.
the fin. But I agree with you. But anyway, I disrupted the train. So tweeting, LinkedIn, where else?
Second of all, we have a website. You can go and search for developer advocates. I work with a team of 90 other individuals
90.
here, and they pivot on these technologies. We're talking students, we're talking Power BI, Microsoft Graph, .NET, infrastructure, some of the names that you've already aware of there, John Papa, well, it was Donovan Brown before he left us.
I know Donovan well.
Yeah, before he left us though.
I know.
And we help the product teams. So I'm going to go feedback to the product teams on Visual Studio Code, on Microsoft Azure for all of the discussions here. And I said, they like this, they don't like that, change that. And we're the kind of glue that the product teams, they can't really scale up to the field, and we engage with the developers there. We do podcasts and blogs and a lot of material. You can go into our YouTube site. We have a website called, a YouTube site called Java at Microsoft, and we also publish Java basic language training there. So we teach developers how to use Java, how to use .NET. We also have a Python series, so nearly any platform you can think of. We are looking at the TikToks and the YouTube shorts and making it a little bit short, but it's hard to take a company with 250,000 people and slow them down to 6 or 8 seconds to do that.
It's hard to make our company slow down to that. Anyway, hey Rory, it looks like they're serving lunch, so it's going to get loud here really quickly. Man, you are truly a treasure. Thank you for coming on,
so much
and
for
appreciate it. All righty. Hey, we are at Yalla DevOps. We're going to take a break. It's lunchtime. We'll be back with a full slate this afternoon of some great conversations. Until then, take care.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome here to another Techstrong TV interview. You know, a week or two ago I was down out in Tel Aviv at a conference called Yalla DevOps, and I moderated a great panel there around IoT, the edge, security, and kind of what's coming down the pike. I had a great panel. One of the people on my panel was Natalie Shuva. Natalie is the CEO of a company called Sternum. And I was able to catch up with Natalie today over in Israel and to talk to her because the company announced some major news today that we want to talk about. But Natalie, thank you for joining us on Techstrong TV.
Alan, great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, I tried to kind of set the table, but I didn't tell people your background and the Sternum story. So before we get into today's news, let's just take a quick moment and give people a little bit of your background and that you're co-founder, CEO at Sternum, a little bit about the company.
Yeah, of course. So about myself, really, in a nutshell, grew up in engineering. So started at 14 with undergraduate degree in computer science, and that pretty much set the stage for joining Unit A200, the Israeli NSA, basically. A lot of cybersecurity, mission critical development, and embedded development was involved. Then many years in the Israeli industry, actually in the offensive side, finding zero-day vulnerabilities, understanding exploitations, understanding embedded devices. And then I finished my master's in computer science. The dilemma was between going into medical school or starting something that will influence interesting industries like the medical industry. So for me, it was a bit too late to become a doctor, even though I still dream about it at night. But what we are doing in Sternum is we've built an infrastructure for securing and observing embedded devices, or what we call IoT devices. And we are very excited about that because it means that you can secure your pacemakers, your insulin pumps, your PLCs, your industrial control systems, in a way that up until now was pretty much saved for cloud and endpoints and not for the IoT space. And this is what we built. Yeah.
Well, let me just say that the doctor's profession, their losses is the IoT and edge and security industry's gain, right? But it's a dilemma. Every parent. Do I want my child to be a doctor, or do I want him to change the world in technology? Anyway, how long has Sternum been around now?
3.5 years now. Built our technology, though, in the garage for quite some time. And in the past year, this is really where we went to market. And we're already working with major companies securing very interesting devices.
I got it. All right. And again, we did this panel at Yala. Really, kind of the next frontier now that we're seeing is this, we've talked about Internet of Things for a long time, but it's really taken off. And I think the kinds of things that are empowering it is the move to edge computing, where so not everything is necessarily going all the way back to the cloud. And again, as I mentioned at the panel, is the whole idea of 5G networking, which is giving much better bandwidth, bigger, deeper bandwidth, faster bandwidth, and then they'll empower that edge and IoT devices as well. Well, before we get into today's news, one other thing. Natalie, when I look at the world of IoT, there's what I call industrial stuff, industrial IoT, medical devices that you spoke about, things like connected pacemakers or insulin pumps or IV in the hospital, right? A hospital's loaded with connected devices, everything from the MRIs and those pumps to the heart monitors and everything else that, makes a modern hospital work. And then there's industrial IoT devices, sensors in manufacturing facilities and all that. Then there's a whole nother category, the connected house, right? My house has 40 IPs in it. I don't even know what I'm doing with 40 IPs in my house, but those devices are connected as well. Where do you think is all of that Sternum sort of market, or is there a particular, is it industrial versus consumer, or what do you guys go
aiming for?
Yeah, I will give you two answers. One of them is the engineering answer, and one of them is the business answer. From the engineering perspective, this is what you just said is one of the biggest problems in the IoT industry, the diversity, the different implications, the different operating systems, the different communication protocols. It's not just Windows or Linux anymore, right? We have and different applications, different companies building those devices. But the way Sternum designed the solution is about taking these diversified operating systems, or what we call the broken infrastructure, because we are building this connected future on embedded systems that are pretty much legacy systems. Real-time operating systems, embedded Linux, they don't have any advanced capability. From an engineering perspective, Sternum suits all of that. And connected home industrial control systems and medical devices, they're all working on these same operating systems and this same kind of infrastructure. And we integrate with that. So from an engineering perspective, everything you just mentioned is under the Sternum support. From a business perspective, though, I think there are different implications to a medical device being compromised and a connected home device being compromised. And it means different requirements, it means even different language and different risk profile. And from that perspective, Sternum main focus is mission critical sectors like critical infrastructures, industrial, manufacturing, and medical. Where connected home is less of a focus for us, but any home manufacturer company can still enjoy our solution.
Got it. All right. We got all that out of the way. Let's get to the news now. 7 minutes later, but you guys announced some big news today, and why don't you share with our audience?
Yeah, so I'm very excited about that because I've been talking to customers for 3 years now. And one of the things I keep hearing is on-device security doesn't work. It caused a lot of performance issues. It's hard to integrate. I don't have the source code. I can't do anything about that. And I don't believe you that it's going to actually work. I'm not even talking about the security part of it. And we realized, Ellen, that there is a big trust issue in the industry. Companies like Schneider Electric, Siemens, they take very seriously the safety and reliability of their product. And implementing endpoint protection, it's not like installing CrowdStrike on your Windows device.
Right.
That being said, you still need endpoint protection on those devices. So what we are launching today, Ellen, is what we call trust-led growth. And what we mean by that is we want people to actually have easy access to install our product, to experiment with our product, to evaluate our product, to see the overhead, to see the performance, to see what kind of security incidents it can prevent in a very transparent way. So what we did is actually we are launching today a free version of our solution, open to all to install in a single-click installation. Inside the platform, Ellen, you can see exactly what vulnerabilities are prevented. You have a nice view of all the CWEs, the common weakness enumeration by MITRE that is protected by Sternum. You can see what is detected, what is prevented, what kind of events we are collecting. It's only one-way communication, so that the cloud does not speak with the devices, only the devices speaks with the cloud. There is prevention on device. And the key element is that you get all of the features that we have in terms of prevention free to install on your Linux system in a single click. And I think, there are big companies that can go through the process of POC, the process of evaluation, the legal, and then testing. But there are companies that can't really do that. And they don't have any solution out there today to help with designing security in their products. And we are actually trying to solve that issue and give free access to anyone who wants to start evaluating and designing security into his products.
That's fantastic. That's really, really great. Just to put it in perspective for our audience, one of the one of the challenges around IoT management and IoT security is you don't have a Windows computer with a half a terabyte of hard drive and gigabits of RAM and everything else. Many IoT devices have very limited headspace, right? And so you wind up with a lot of headless microkernel, type of setups. What percentage of the IoT kind of base do you think runs Linux, Natalie?
So I think it's around 60%.
So
I have to
majority.
say, Alan, that our platform supports real-time operating systems like Zephyr, FreeRTOS, Microyom. Medical devices are usually running on real-time operating systems. We have a deployment on VxWorks, a PLC. So our platform actually supports this side of the industry as well. Currently, we are opening the free license just for Linux. It is 60%, but still you have to be very lightweight. And our solution, being able to work on real-time operating systems, means that even for Linux, it's less than 3% overhead, almost no memory usage. But you know what? Words doesn't mean a lot when you can actually try it out and test it yourself and see the overhead. And this is what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. You mentioned it is free. Are there any sort of limits on that? How many devices or?
Is there any limits that people should be aware of?
Yeah, it is missing some of our advanced features like customizable anomaly detection engine, full-blown observability, collection of software events, identifying memory leaks, identifying malfunctioning in the field, enabling customers to put their own logs and metrics. These are missing. What you are getting is 3 devices for free with all of the prevention algorithms implemented, like command injection prevention, memory integrity, use after free prevention, buffer overflows. And really what we are seeing in scale as the top 10 OSAP vulnerabilities for IoT devices is what you're getting for free. If you need to protect more than 3 devices, this is where you need to upgrade.
All right. And you know what they say, even the worst hamburger to a starving man in the desert is a beautiful thing, right? So most people, let's face it, a lot of organizations don't have any protection or very, very little protection on their IoT devices today. So this is a great benefit, to anyone, it gives you something. It also gives you a nice upgrade path. 2 things. Number 1, for people who want to use this new free product, what's the easiest way for them to go do this?
Just, type apps.sternum.cloud and get it running on your device. And you know what, Ellen? It's even not just for organizations. If you have your own router and you want it protected against Botenago and against Zoriat, against all of the latest malwares running on routers, you can just surf the Sternum website and get started.
So you could put it on like Wi-Fi routers as well, you think?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of home routers today are running OpenWRT, which is an open source enabling you to enhance the abilities of your home router if you don't trust the vendor. And Sternum can even increase that with an on-device prevention, with real-time alerts if something bad happens. So you are on control on what's happening in your home environment. And for home users, this is just free protection because you usually don't have more than 3 devices.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's really great. Natalie, for people who maybe want to look at exploring some of the other great features that the full-blown, I don't know if you want to call it an enterprise version, but that the full version has, the not free version, give us an idea. How is that priced? So
first, I think before pricing, they should know it's about 2 days of integration max. So they can reach out. It's the fastest, lightweight installation I ever known in the embedded space. So that's one thing. In terms of pricing, Alan, like every other SaaS platform, it is based on the consumption. So as you connect more devices to the platform, the pricing increase per device.
Got it. And this is a solution that scales all the way from, like you said, 1 to 3 devices, and then the full product is really an enterprise level kind of, scalability.
Gotcha. Fantastic.
Yeah, we have millions of devices today connected. We support devices that have FDA approval. We support devices that are operating in nuclear facilities. And we also protect gateways and home routers. So it goes back to my point where the infrastructure is the same. And it needs to have military-grade protection because everyone is a target today, unfortunately. Every asset, every device, every network.
Agreed. Fantastic. Natalie, one last question, because I know we mentioned where people can go download. But to get any background on Sternum, the website again is Sternum, STERNUM.cloud. Oh, Sternum IoT. That's it. Sternum.com. All right. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to sit and chat with us. Fantastic news. This is a really great thing for people out there to be able to get this free software on their router, on their devices, and get some security and protection immediately. Keep up the great work and come keep us posted as things develop over there.
Sure, be happy to. Thank you so much for hosting me today.
My pleasure. Good luck with Sternum.
Go check it out. That's SternumIoT.com. If you've got IoT, and we all have IoT devices today, go get some free protection. It's available now. All right, we're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be right back.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, we're back here live at KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, Valencia, Spain, and what a beautiful city Valencia is. We've been having a great time here the last couple of days, but we're joined now by my friend Frank Safai. Did I get it close? David.
And we were talking about Frank before. That's why I know.
You got me going.
It's okay.
All right, David. David Safai. David is the CEO of Twilio, which is probably more important for you to know, actually, at the end of the day. But anyway, David, I apologize. How are you liking Valencia?
Oh, it's a beautiful city. I've been
really
here once before.
Oh, you have?
I've had a wonderful time. The people are really nice. It's a great city to walk around and bike, and the food is fantastic.
Unbelievable, yeah. I went for paella last night. We had tapas. So I've never been to Valencia. I've been to Barcelona, Madrid,
Yeah.
What a gem of a... I mean, kudos to the CNCF for picking this town.
And to pull all these people here, I was thinking, oh my goodness.
What a great thing for the economy.
It's not easy to get to.
No, I know.
Look at this floor.
Well, that's the bad side, is these people only see the background.
There are a lot of people out here.
There are a lot of people. And, but there's a buzz, there's an energy. And you get that with the open source community and everything. So it's great. It's great to be back.
People are excited.
You know, it's interesting. Back in the States, we're seeing very uneven sort of response to in-person events.
Yes.
Some people are like, look, I work from home. For me to actually get dressed to go be somewhere is a bridge too far.
Yeah.
Others are, I can't wait to see live people again, right?
Yeah.
So we're going through that sort of, I guess,
We're feeling it out.
Yeah, it'll equalize. But certainly they've come out in force here for Kubernetes and Cloud Native.
Hopefully this sets a foundation for the next one, right?
I hope
keep
so.
building on it.
I hope so, David. So look, our audience, most of the people are familiar with Chilio, but there might be people not or not sure. Why don't we start with that?
Sure.
Give them a little corporate background.
Yeah. No, thanks again for having me. So Chilio is a cloud-native data protection platform, right? And so we protect all Kubernetes-based applications. As long as you're using a CNCF distribution, certified distribution, we can detect, observe, and protect it, and allow you to really recover that application and its data. Think of it as a time machine, if you will.
Sure.
In place, into a new cluster, into a new cloud, or we can actually transform that application into other distributions of Kubernetes.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's a great migration tool, but not just migration, but taking that next step of providing data protection, and as you bring your stateful applications online.
Love it. You said something that kind of triggered something with it. You said CNCF approved distribution of Kube. Look, I'm old, right? I remember the Unix wars, and then we went through all the different Linux distros, and there's still a lot of Linux distros. Actually, I just recently spoke to the guy he was the original fellow for CentOS from Department of Energy, right? Which went to Red Hat, which was then end-of-life, but it's still part of Red Hat Enterprise. But it's not a fork, it's a daughter thing called Rocky Linux.
Yeah, Rocky.
I don't know if you heard, and it's exploding. No, it's really happening. Have we seen this in Kubernetes distros, Dave? Where we're seeing like the balkanization of Kubernetes, or?
So that's a good question. Our roots as a company, it started back in OpenStack. And so we had started to see this story. I joke around and I said it's like the movie Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Well, no,
I've seen this,
but
story
it's
before,
true.
Right?
When you're in this business long enough, that's exactly what it is.
Absolutely. So I chuckle about that because relative to us, people start on these journeys and they say, all right, first we're going to start on a standardized distribution, and that standardized distribution, everyone packages it however they want to package it. But what Kubernetes has done really well in CNCF is to make sure that everyone stays aligned, and I think the community does really want to stay aligned. I was talking about, Groundhog's Day. I get a kick out of the fact that when people start on this journey, they think that there's nirvana in stateless. And we chuckle all the time.
Pass, right? Yeah.
Stateful always finds a way. And so the need for data protection continues to build and grow, and we know it's going to happen, right?
Of course it is.
So, we've seen the story.
Well, and that is true. It's meet the new boss, same as the old boss kind of thing. And I don't
care
whether
you liked me before.
Right. I hear you. Anyway, though, here at the show, you guys are announcing sort of it's like a public preview, if you will.
Yeah.
Of some new functionality. Why don't you don't mind sharing with the audience?
Absolutely. We're really, really excited. We are actually showing a tech preview of what we call continuous restore. We are unveiling it in Microsoft's booth, in the Azure booth tomorrow. And if anyone wants to see in action, they can also visit us on P11. But what continuous restore is it's evolutionary and revolutionary in the sense that we all remember asynchronous replication from a traditional IoT sense. Think about this relative to the cloud native world. So we empower you as a tenant to pre-position data in multiple clouds simultaneously, regardless of whatever that infrastructure is. So now you've got one source of truth
Right.
in however many hyperscalers you want on-prem. So I can have a DR cloud, a test dev cloud, a non-prod and a prod cloud, all from one source of truth. And my RTO is going to be like this now.
That's what I was just going to get to.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
because that's always the Achilles heel of these things. Oh, yeah, of course I've got backups. It just takes me 3 or 4 months to restore. That's great. What am I going to do?
But now you want to recover, pick a cloud, or you want to migrate. So think of it as this mesh network. And within this mesh network now, what I can also do is from edge clouds, I can curate data and repatriate and pull it in. So,
got it.
While it's great because there's a lot of great technology here on the floor, and people are talking about how do I integrate with each other more, and people continue to talk about security and things. This is innovative, and I want to transform this.
Well,
community.
not only that, when you have this in your back pocket, you may be more willing to try these things.
Absolutely.
Because you can always kind of, and I don't want to use this, probably a trademark term, but you can always snap back.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so go, give it a shot and see what you got, and again, whether it's in a dev environment or whatever, you've got this, you get out of jail free card.
Now, if you start thinking about the adoption of multi-cloud, and multi-cloud could just be multiple private clouds. I don't care what it is, right? But this starts to become a middleware or middle layer, a data fabric.
Yep.
And I don't want to talk about multi-cloud, I want to talk about cross-cloud.
So tell me, what do you mean by cross-cloud?
So, right, cloud is a pool of resources, right? Compute, network, and storage. It's your application, your data. That's the key. I should be able to run it anywhere, anytime, or everywhere, all the time.
I think that's a good definition then of cross-cloud.
We are really excited. So we're going to go. We'll be GA with this next quarter.
So let's just be clear. This is May. So you're talking July sometime, maybe?
End of
August.
July, yeah.
Before Q3.
Yes. And and by the next KubeCon, there'll be a very big splash around this.
Which, by the way, is Detroit, Rock City. I think in the fall.
It's going to be exciting.
I haven't been to Detroit in a long time either, but I'm going to hold you to that though. Let's make sure we get that.
We're really excited. We're excited for the community. We want people to try continuous restore, leverage it, and they have it as their assurance tool. They have it as their test dev tool. Part of what you just have.
It's a get out of jail free card. Let me ask you a question. A lot of people watching this live right now, unfortunately, are not here in Valencia.
Yeah.
They may or may not be joining in on the virtual, and there is a virtual kind of sister, conference to this. It's actually the same conference. It's a virtual experience versus in person.
Okay, yeah.
But if they can't make that, where can they go get information outside of that?
Yeah, so there are a lot, and thank you. So there are a lot of places you can go. One, what we do have our page here, right? The web page relative to the virtual conference. You can come to Trilio.io. You can come in and
so it'll be on Trilio.io.
Ask for a demo. The team is ready, willing, and able, and you can actually talk to the other distributions that are out here. Ask them about Trilio. Because that, I think, is one of our superpowers, is that we try to be as flexible and as agnostic as we can, and we want to work with all the distributions.
Absolutely, man. And if you didn't catch it, it was Trilio.io, Trilio, right?
Yes, sir.
Check it out. Hey, this is exciting.
Thanks. We are pumped.
Good, man.
We are pumped. Hey,
best of luck.
So good to see you.
David, it's great to see you in person, live in person.
I know, stay safe.
Crazy. Stay safe is right. We're going to take a break here on the floor at KubeCon, CNCF, Cloud Native Con. We'll be back in just a moment.
Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, good morning. Good morning here from RSA conference. It is Wednesday, it's actually the third day of RSA, because they did, where Monday used to be sort of a a 0 day kind of thing. Or that's the wrong word to use at a security conference.
It's awesome.
Right. Monday was sort of a pre-conference day, and things kind of kicked off on Tuesday. This year they did kick off on Monday, but there's no Friday. And so we have today and tomorrow, and that'll put a wrap on RSA 2022. I'm happy to be joined by George Gershow with me today. George is with Sumo Logic. George, welcome. Welcome to our Broadcast Alley
Alan,
studio here.
Thank you so much for having me.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate being here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So, George, look, our audience is no stranger to sumo, but for people who maybe aren't sure, a crowd, not, we have security people, DevOps people, SREs, we have the whole gamut. Give them a little sumo background and maybe a little bit about what you do at Sumo.
Sure, absolutely. So to keep it short, Sumo Logic helps folks build and secure modern day applications that are built off of microservices and right in the cloud. Personally, I'm lucky enough to serve and support a team called Risk, which is real estate, IT, security, and compliance.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So let's dive in on the real estate.
Yeah.
What exactly we mean by that?
Yeah. So think about it as facilities.
Okay.
As people, go back to work and enter offices, we want to make sure they feel safe and secure doing so. And it's a software driven business. So I'm lucky enough to have that team with me as well.
Very cool, man. Kind of land and facilities. Very cool.
Yeah. With IT.
With IT, obviously. So George, this is it's definitely an in-person RSA this year, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. The exhibit floor stretches on as far as the eye can see, it seems, right? Bigger even than in years past.
Yeah.
Right? They used to separate the North Hall from the South Hall. Now it's all just one mass. But what do you think? How's RSA been for you this year?
It's really been fantastic. Just going through the floor, seeing the new startups coming out.
There's a lot of them.
A lot of them. And a lot of them are really, really cool. It's just great to have that vibe again.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of my early days in this industry.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. And
I hear you.
The networking too, Alan. Just seeing people I haven't seen forever, hugging them. I don't care how that sounds. I'm a hugger.
Yeah, no,
shaking hands.
You know what? So if there's two messages from RSA this year for me. First of all, zero trust. I don't ever want to see zero trust
ever
again. They've overplayed the zero trust. Yeah, man, that's the word this year. But secondly, people.
Yeah.
It's about people. It's about, especially like you and me, we've been in this industry a while. It's good to see our friends who we haven't seen in 2-3 years. I know, maybe you see them on Zoom, maybe you talk to them, maybe you interact with them on social media. It's not the same as giving them a hug.
It really isn't. Right? And for us in general, even like employees, people that work at Sumo, we've had 400 people get onboarded since the pandemic.
Agreed.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never met you in person. So just shaking their hand or giving them a hug and welcoming them as humans is awesome.
Absolutely. So it's that people to people connection. And I think that, no matter what we do with virtual events and all the cool augmented reality and this feature and that feature, it just doesn't take the place of that people to people.
It just doesn't. You build those connections, and then even having, if I can say it, a beer, with a coffee.
Or something else. Whatever. Look, it's California, man. It's legal.
I'm from Colorado, so
you're in Colorado, exactly. But let's talk a little bit about sumo activities here at RSA. You guys had a panel last night, a panel discussion you put on, right?
We did.
Tell us.
Yeah, so it was at the St. Regis African Museum, which was really, really cool.
Yeah.
We had the CISO JD Hansen of Code 42. We had a partner that also showed up, and then we had the CISO of MGM Studios there as well,
that's
too.
Nice.
It's nice, and we focused on what you've been saying, Alan, which was future of work, people, and then really around mental health. Security people have been on 24/7 forever. And then now everyone's kind of on 24/7. So how do we start alleviating some of that as leaders?
Yeah. So tonight, we have like maybe the 15th or 16th year I'm doing our security bloggers meetup that I started back in 2003. And, with COVID, we've lost people, obviously. But we've also lost people in mental health issues these past couple of years, because I think being on 24/7, but being isolated on 24/7 has taken its toll on some folks, and it sucks. I mean, it hurts. It hurts. But I don't want to put a whole downer on the thing. Certainly being back in person. And here's another thing I'm hearing, George. I wonder what you're hearing is people saying, hey, you know what? I'd like to go back to the office, right? For a long time, we all heard, oh, this is great. No one's going to the office anymore. We're all going to work from home. And yeah, I think it's good to have that option to do sometimes, but there's something to be said about going to the office.
There really is. And so again, I'm lucky enough to have real estate. And what we're finding is when you have a purpose-driven event, like you can't go in an office and sit next to, like I can't sit next to you and you're doing a Zoom and I'm doing a Zoom.
Right. That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
One of us has to go on mute anyway.
Totally.
I've tried it, but go ahead.
But, that experience, if you have just a get together or some kind of collaborative, creative meeting, people love it. And so, that's part of our strategy is to have everything very purpose driven. When folks come in, they get together, we cater lunches and everything else. And there's just nothing like it. Hybrid is the way to go.
I think we are looking at a hybrid future. And I'll tell you, I've also spent a lot of time talking to entrepreneurs and business owners, big and small. And, they think they could get that it's better for them if they have people in the office. They're a little afraid to push it too hard because they don't want to force anyone to go, great resign or whatever. But I think the consensus is building that going back to the office isn't a bad thing if we can. So we'll see where that goes.
Well, we'll see. But, there also has to be commitment to it as well from the employee, because like I'll tell you now, like being in charge of real estate, I'm not sure like how much square footage to have, because if you're saying you're going to come back in, and then we need you to commit to that as well, too. And it'll be interesting to see what it shows. So you're right. Let's be gentle.
Yeah. This is this whole thing. Do you do hotel office space where I'm not going to assign you a desk or office permanently because you're only here 2-3 days a week.
Right.
And it's an expensive proposition to keep an office for you 7 days a week when you're only here 2. Or not. I mean, what I can tell you what I've done personally here for Techstrong in our offices is we have a bunch of assigned office for people who come in most every day. And then we have a lot of floater offices, right? Where the out-of-towners who come in, the occasional people, have a place they can park.
Right.
And it's comfortable and it's good. So I do think that's a little bit of the future. You guys had some sort of survey or some research come out as well recently, right?
We did. And we focused a lot on compliance. Compliance is one of those things I think that most security people don't want to talk about. They don't want to hear about it. But let me tell you, it's really the biggest business driver possible. Most of my budget always sits in compliance. And I use that to feed security in a lot of ways and create that hygiene. But by merging our compliance folks with our security team and giving responsibility to both, it creates one happy family. And then driving that culture across our company. It's a very important step, right?
There's no doubt about it. So give me some of the background if you can on this compliance thing.
Yeah.
Like how wide was the research and all that?
Sure. So let's start off with like what we fall under. This is going to be acronym soup coming at you, but ISO 27001, CSA STAR, PCI, which is a major differentiator for us, FedRAMP, we're HIPAA audited every year. And then we also have NYDFS as well, too. And so having those regulations, what it shows is rigor. And we've been doing this, Alan, for 7 years for most of those regulations. Wow. So what we decided to do was get something out there that describes like our strategy, the importance, how it ties into security. And we're really proud of that. It's a major investment for us. And then even more so being a SaaS-based company, our customers get that for free as part of the service. So think about it. If you're rolling out an on-prem type solution, you're held responsible for complying that infrastructure and the application. With someone like Sumo Logic, you get that as part of the service, which I think is a huge differentiator that we just don't talk about enough. So we're getting the word out there and we're being bold about it.
In some ways, I guess it's almost like the SaaS version of supply chain. You know what I'm saying? Where you want to know if I'm using this vendor for a solution, what, that he's got his, or they've got theirs. Let's not be gendery here, right? They've got their ducks in a row when it comes to things like compliance and regulation. So it's an important thing.
Alan, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's a great way to describe the supply chain, or also what the executive order from Biden is, which is the SBOM, the software bill of materials. We've been doing this for a long time, and now it's becoming more important than ever, because as you've seen, ransomware, supply chain attacks. Oh my gosh. But I guess if you got zero trust, that doesn't happen. Right?
Well, yeah.
I had to throw that in.
I had to throw it in. Bing, bing. All right. First zero trust of the day right there, man. George, we got a t-shirt for you on that.
Yay!
But, anyway, but you mentioned SBOMs. So we did our DevSecOps event all day yesterday over at
I heard about it.
South. Yep. And we had several people talk about SBOM. Primarily, we had a panel of Dr. Elazieri from Intel, we had a lady from NIST, another woman from Linux Foundation, and a fella, I forgot what government agency, but we spoke a lot about SBOM. But my friend Chen-Si Wang, I don't know if you know Chen-Si.
I don't.
She's now the founder of Rain Capital.
Cool.
She used to be a forester. She's a professor at Carnegie Mellon. She's a PhD.
I'm getting a crush right now. So just keep on talking.
She's a rock star. Chen-Si brought up something about SBOMs that I never thought of before. It's an IT issue, an IP issue, intellectual property, because if I'm going to start giving you all of the ingredients, like a recipe in my thing, right, in my product, I'm kind of giving you my IP, right? You now know the recipe. Why can't you cook it yourself?
Right.
And that's something I think that we're going to need to figure out about this whole SBOM thing, which is, how do I give you the recipe without preventing you from just cutting me out of it?
I think it just depends on how far it goes, Alan, you know, because like I can give you the tools and the software and the open source that we're using to make the sausage.
But doesn't make you a sausage maker.
Nope. Exactly.
You're still just a sausage consumer.
That's exactly right. And so it's almost like, even like, hey, look, I'm a huge fan of cloud, right? We write on AWS, but I'm not telling AWS absolutely everything about what we do, right?
Exactly.
It's done a telemetry.
Yeah, they've done, not to bad mouth in AWS.
They have, he's right.
They've done that before too, right?
Yes, they have.
No, we'd like to talk to you strategically. And then 6 months later, they roll out your competition, right?
Exactly. But we do got to be careful with it. I think she makes a great point. We're not going to take it that far. I'll tell you now, most vendors, we're just not going to give you that IP. It's not.
No, I think it's suicide, right? It's just counterproductive. Anyway, George, any final thoughts around RSA or what's happening with Sumo?
Yeah, so let's just start with RSA first. So one, I'm so appreciative to be here. I'm so thankful to do this with you and just see people. It's been fantastic. I'm looking forward to coming back again. For those of you that haven't been, please come to RSA. It's wonderful. And then with Sumo Logic, I'm just very excited about the future. We've got some great solutions out there. We're rolling out our cloud SIM solution more and more every single day. And the future is just nothing but bright for us. So if you're looking for a job opportunity, let me know.
We're hiring, right? So that's a common theme here too, though. Totally. I've seen a lot of we're hiring stuff out.
Oh, I'm recruiting, Alan.
Yeah, always be recruiting, ABR. But I'm looking at this banner right out here, and for those who want to come to RSA next year, it's April 24th to the 27th. So a little bit, not quite February, but not June either. But an interesting thing I realized my team told me yesterday is the week before next year is actually KubeCon Europe.
Oh, wow.
So for some of us,
it's going to be tough.
Yeah, we're going to have to go to Amsterdam, come home from Amsterdam, and come out here. I mean, don't take up any, don't
it's
cry for me, Argentina, But
yeah, totally. I know exactly. I know it's so funny because I've been telling my 23-year-old daughter Madison, I'm like, do both.
You want to
go
see
to
the world?
and
Don't do it. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Anyway, hey man, George,
hey, thank you, Alan, so much. You're awesome.
All right. Hey, we're going to be back live here at RSA, right here at Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. We're here all day. Check it out. We'll be right back.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by Techstrong Live and powered by Techstrong Group.
Well, hey, thank you for joining us. We have another episode of DevOps Unbound. We have a great topic today. We're going to be talking about data ops and how do we manage the plethora, the mass amount of data that we both create through our applications and we also create as part of our software development process. DevOps Unbound is sponsored by our wonderful friends at Tricentis, who work with us on some of the content for these shows, though it's not a product pitch by them by any means. They're constantly helping us with kind of figure out topics that are interesting to people that are living in the worlds of creating software and testing and DevOps and data and all kinds of great things. So thank you to the team, Lanier and our producer Jody, for helping us put this panel together. So let's get started. By the way, my friend Alan, co-host Alan Schimmel, is away. He's just getting back into the country from some international travel, so I'm sure he'll join us on a future episode. So let's jump right into it. Let's start out by having our panel introduce themselves. Devani, would you start us out, please? Tell us a little bit about you, the kind of work that you do, and you're welcome to mention who you're with if you choose to.
My name is Devani Lamas. I'm the CEO of a startup called Transposit. We are a process automation company focused on helping technical operations teams of all sorts, from DevOps to SRE to IT teams, drive better customer experiences by automating collaborative workflows like incident management, help desk requests, and developer experience. I've been in the data space most of my career, previously ran product teams at Splunk, and I'm very, very excited to talk about a topic very close to my heart.
There's a lot of data get created in those kind of products. So for sure, a wonderful experience. How about Arun? Would you go next?
Sure. Thanks, Mitch. I'm Arun Muchandani, and I am with a startup, Narwhal, which is focused on data automation cloud. And we have been helping industries in doing the data engineering, data storage, data automation, as well as the in-circle from the automation perspective on the application automation, which includes the DevOps, data ops, and the MLOps side. And also we have a strong cloud competencies, which is from the cloud modernization and the cloud migration perspective. Been in industry for over 15 years, predominantly in the data analytics space, and worked with the likes of American Express, Discover, MasterCard, Visa. And this, same as Devani said, this is a topic which is very close to our heart, and happy to be here.
Vast quantities of data being generated by those types of companies. So you're very familiar with the topic. All right. Andrew, if you want to jump in next, love to have you introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Andrew Hughes. I run QA, DevOps, and service delivery teams at a company called TriMedics. We are a clinical engineering services provider. So we have technicians in hospitals all over the country repairing and maintaining medical equipment. And my teams help build and deliver software that supports our technicians as well as our customers in understanding what equipment they own, what the cybersecurity posture of their connected medical devices looks like. And we've been partnered with Narwhal for going on 5 years now, I think, in our digital transformation journey. So they've been a critical partner for us.
Excellent.
Well, Curtis, bring it home. Introduce yourself here.
All right. Hello, I'm Curtis O'Dell. I'm the Global Director for Tricentis Data Integrity Solution. I've been in data space about 35 years, built a lot of risk systems across many different verticals. We are the test automation leader in the world, and data is a subset of what we do. We do the full stack, but it all comes back around to DevOps. So this is right on top of where we love to talk.
And data is what makes the world go around. That's for sure. No doubt. Well, let's start out with this. I'd love to have us create kind of a working definition of data ops, like everything asterisk ops, right? We've got something ops for everything, which is great. I mean, I actually love that because it's a good indication of, hey, let's jump on the bandwagon. We have kind of a part to play in this DevOps world of things too. I mean, we can go to Wikipedia and find a definition. We can go to any number of vendor companies who are selling in this space, but we don't have to have the perfect definition. We just have kind of a working one so that we know kind of how we're defining the space. I looked at Wikipedia and it says that data ops is a set of practices, process technologies that combines an integrated and process-oriented perspective on data with automation and methods from agile software engineering to improve quality, speed, collaboration, promote a culture of continuous improvement. It's a longer sentence than that. It's a long sentence. Anyway, I don't know. How does that strike you as a place to start? Or would you take exception to it, or maybe want to amend or enhance that? Anybody can jump in.
Sure, Mitch. I'll say that the definition you picked from Wikipedia is quite a mouthful. We can just make it very simple. It is just the data pipeline automation and how we can just make it more robust. We can make it more predictable and more useful, essentially providing value to the organizations.
Oh, I like simpler. Simple is usually hard, but that was very good. Okay, jump in. Other folks.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I've seen in a lot of the data ops teams that I've worked with is it's really a lot of teams are looking at the success of DevOps and those practices and applying those practices that they've learned and have worked really well to lots of different other roles. And for me, DevOps always comes back to culture and team dynamics and team behavior. So I think any conversation about data ops also has to touch on how those teams are evolving the way they work within themselves from a, kind of top-down waterfall style process to a much more collaborative, integrated, dynamic, engineering first kind of approach.
Great.
I would agree. I was just going to add that I always look at it as DevOps as a larger and data ops being kind of a subset of that. And as kind of, if folks are familiar with DevOps, it really is everything there, but just focused on data.
It seems like data ops gets applied to the large world of data, or more specifically to the world of data within DevOps, workflow pipelines, et cetera. And probably a lot of the same principles apply. And part of our sort of topic was data integrity of that. Because I don't know about you, but it's, what's the source of truth? Is it truly, accurate in today's definition of how we want to use that data? Has been modified for any number of reasons. Is it something we could really use for enhancing our workflow pipelines, maybe even governance, for reporting, for compliance and other kind of reasons? There's lots of uses for it. So I'd love for somebody to kind of start off with, let's talk about workflow pipelines, data pipelines in the DevOps process. And what role does data ops play in that? Because we know that we're using a lot of tools, we're doing a lot of work in processes that are creating a lot of data.
Well, I could say something to that. Basically, the way we look at it, or I look at it, is and kind of tying in data integrity to that, as well as the data ops, is that today we have a world where data is this increasing velocity and all that's going on. So DevOps was created so that as you make change into systems, you can easily continually, and then continuous is the word often used for continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous testing, so that we can basically keep up with that rate of change. And I think the data world, from a standpoint, is challenged because the majority of, if you will, the processes, if they're not into that type of tool chain that allows for that continuous integration, maybe continuous delivery, but definitely continuous testing, then everything kind of gets stagnant and you end up with a lot of problems and the governance issues and everything that come up because there's not coverage of what's going on. You're not testing, I'm just going to use that word, the change that is happening in a timely fashion. So you can't keep up with what's going on. So people then say, well, forget it. Let's just put it in the data ops or DevOps and just send it out into the world. And we'll hope that our production monitoring and systems will catch the problems. It does, and it may, but it's too late. We don't test in production. And I think, to me, the whole idea behind data ops is that now in a whole new way to look at the world is that you can now really test in these lower environments, be able to run everything you need. The whole idea behind DevOps, work with operations to make quicker, faster moves for the company, and you're averse to all that risk. You're not doing that. So to me, data ops in a way really boils down to risk. And I mean, we have customers, I can give some stories on maybe a little later, that have this as their main guiding principle for what they're trying to do, because I can't go data ops if I cannot make my processes work with that. And at the end of the day, if the data is not good, what was the purpose at all? Maybe you're going to argue with that or agree.
Yeah, interesting, Curtis. I see that means most of the things that you have said, right? That's how the things in real life just happens. So from the data ops perspective, there are 6 different components that we can just categorize, right? One is you can say the collaboration or the code management. Another is the continuous integration. Third piece is the continuous delivery or the deployment aspect. In this collaboration and the integration, you also need to have the continuous testing and the continuous monitoring as well. The aspect of the data integrity becomes important when the different teams, they are not integrated, they are not collaborating, and the data observability becomes an issue. So this is the place where we have seen, for example, in one of a large payment processor where we were just working, they had different teams focusing on these different components. So if there was any data integrity issue, they were only catching up when it was reflecting into the reports. So right from the data source, the issue has generated, but you are catching up only in the reports when the damage has been done. So that is the type of problem that we see can be solved by this data ops pipeline, where you can have the data observability as a part of continuous monitoring, and you can identify and catch up the issues right up front. If you can just identify this process, streamline this process, and then make it repeatable, that can create a tremendous amount of synergies. Spot on, Curtis.
I think that's a healthy way to look at it. The flow, the pipeline across that process. And what you remind me of, Arun, is we've had for ages, right? The silo problem, data silos, application team, cultural silos. Data isn't immune to that, as well. And as we move through workflows, we move through pipelines, how do you make sure the right data is effectively being used in subsequent steps, or being able to look across all those steps to gain insight and intelligence? Because, as you mentioned, you don't want to get to the end of we released code, 5 times this week, but we've now got this problem out 5 times. If we would have known earlier in the process, we could have changed it, fixed the defect, whatever it might be, made a different decision based on that. Devani, I'm real curious your experience, given your background with this too.
I think that data has gone from being a set of reports that might justify, hiring asks to our bosses, to really, data applications. And every organization, what really amazes me about most of our customers is that they are all building very heavyweight, complex data applications that are driving core parts of their business. So there's a few things that I think about. I think that you're spot on with the data silos. I think there's also a really big role to play for data ops teams around making sure that the right data is being collected. A lot of people are still using systems that are very manual. They might have a good understanding of their log data. They might have good monitoring data, but they don't have as good of a sense of the human data around their organization, what processes people are running, what workflows. And then there's, kind of that closed loop process about understanding whether the things that you're providing to your customers, to your internal customers, are actually meeting the mark and meeting the need. So, again, back to what we've seen from DevOps, I really think that we're in the middle of a renaissance right now, where it's not just about instrumentation, it's also about asking, how can this be a real business advantage for our organization? How can we build a culture of people, like many eyes make light work, of identifying problems, continuously improving there. And then, the thing that gets me really excited right now is just the number of companies that are asking, how do we make sure that down to the collection point, we have that full integrated loop, so that if we find that a report isn't getting us what we need, we have a really clean way to get that communication back to the data ops team so that they can go improve the instrumentation in the first place and get the data that we need. And that's really where you start seeing the leverage start happening for organizations, in my experience.
Andrew, I'm curious. Does this resonate? Is data ops sort of the data scientist applied to DevOps? Is it that analytics? Is it that insight? I mean, we obviously have more than that because we're talking about the integrity of data across the pipeline. But is it about getting to the information, getting to it in a way that, is more than trapped in a report, or maybe trapped in some storage medium that we can effectively use as part of the DevOps processes?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think I apologize for the audio issues earlier. My opening line was about how our data team was actually our first early adopters for DevOps practices when we started our DevOps transformation. And so our data teams really led the charge on that front, implementing CI/CD pipelines and linting and automated data quality checks and things like that into their own workflows. And I think the impact to the organization has not only been that's really accelerated our DevOps adoption on our traditional software engineering teams, but it's also, I don't know that if you were to say, hey, Andrew, come lead a DevOps transformation at company X, I don't know that I would have thought before to start with data. But if you think about the way data is used in an organization and the blast radius and the potential to sort of offset bad practices or mitigate, I think bringing visibility into the integrity of your data across the pipeline, to Devani's point, quickly surfacing those issues and getting them to the right team so they can see them, for a data team has a different kind of impact in terms of scale across the organization than what you would have in more of a siloed application team. It's even honestly influenced. I'd be curious, this is maybe out of scope for this conversation, but be curious for this group. The rate at which our data teams have adopted data ops practices has influenced the way we even organize our teams. So previous to this transformation, our teams were really siloed by technology. So we had our data warehousing team, we had our reporting team, we had our application teams. Now we've got cross-functional teams that have embedded data resources on them because of this transformation. So yeah, I think going back to your initial question, I think where does this sit? I would start with data ops transformation, frankly.
You're not the only company that I've heard go through that. We actually have a number of customers. I used to tell people we sell to DevOps and SRE teams, and I had to change that to operations generally, because what I kept finding was we have a number of companies that Many of them were even more modern companies, but as they were really looking at their landscape, the thing about your core business and your core business of code is that there's often so much legacy software sitting there, whereas a lot of companies are newer to the data space. And so it just means that the technologies, the systems, like it's all new. There's not that cruft, there's not the politics, there's not all that other kind of stuff. And so you can really say, we're going to start the way that we would like everything else to go over time and create an example for the rest of the organization. And then it's just such an immediate business impact, right? Like, because you're immediately affecting all of these different business groups that have those needs around data. So I have multiple examples in my head of companies that have gone through exactly that same transformation. And I now tell people, if you don't have data around what you're doing, then even if you go and implement a DevOps practice in your core engineering team, are you going to know? It's like if a DevOps team transforms in a forest and no one's there to see it, did it actually improve the engineering quality? I don't know. Maybe it didn't. So kind of
all I know is that I have to outrun the bear, or not the bear, but I just have to outrun you.
Exactly.
Anyway, senseless analogy.
That's a very interesting piece, Mitch and Devani. I see that this only gets more aggravated when we see the newer technologies coming in. Earlier, you just mentioned, right, regarding the data science piece. That's another beast, right? The difference between the data science, or you can say the machine learning code, and the other codes is that machine learning code is live, and just keeps on changing with the data that it feeds on. So it has to have handled in a different way. So how we used to have a traditional code where we ship it into the production, it remains static and it is done. So the DevOps and the data ops practices were different. With machine learning, you need to see that how the data drift comes into play, how you can just manage the models which were working earlier. Are they still valid or not? And COVID was a great example. It was a data that was not seen by the machine learning models. So once this COVID happened, the machine learning models were just behaving erratic because they have not seen this type of differences. So that led to the high demand in our clients for the machine learning model operations, which is the MLOps, which has come in. And again, DevOps being the umbrella, data ops being this subset, and then machine learning ops become a further subset of it. And that was an interesting piece, which we have seen data integrity become an issue, and how we can just install those type of practices, which can help these pipeline to be automated and more responsive to the changes that we are seeing in the environment.
I have kind of a controversial opinion on that.
I'm sure.
I have a lot of controversial opinions. So I think that there's just some really, really interesting stuff going on in the AI space around large language models and transformer-based models. And I'm sure you guys have all seen DALL-E and, all the work coming out of OpenAI and Microsoft. And it's an arms race, right? Like the AI winter is done, and we are like very much in the middle of a very exciting time. But what I found very interesting is that with the rise of these large models, you're going to see a lot of organizations that are going to move away from training super detailed models for themselves and really leveraging a lot of things out of the box that kind of come pre-trained on billions of data sets and are able to accelerate stuff. And so in light of that, the most important thing you can do is make sure that your data that you are using and that you are pushing into those models is clean, that it is well understood, that you understand any bias that might be in that data that might lead to a certain decision or not. And so what I've been seeing is a real rise in the machine learning engineer and the machine learning engineer as a path to ops. And I think, again, back to data ops, ML ops, all of these teams, right? It's like, how do we take these practices that we've seen work very, very, very well and apply them across our organizations? I'm pretty sure we're going to start seeing the same thing in finance anytime as well.
Curtis, you're nodding in a pretty big way there.
I'm nodding. I'm going to kind of agree and disagree too.
Okay.
So I've been around a long time. You can tell by the gray hair. So we work with a lot of the large enterprises. So you've got systems of records out there that are very old, mainframes and things like that, right? And those are not going away. I know everybody's dreamt about the day when there's no mainframes. They're never going away. They're in fact getting bigger. And so what happens is that you've got to look at it from the standpoint of and what the wording that I would use is democratization of data, right? So data ops is going to allow you now to take these siloed data, and that's the mechanism that really drives it through the capability to get that out to all the people that need that data. So it's a critical piece that's often overlooked. So we're in the test automation, end to end, like you were saying, the full circle test. We do all that, beautiful. But if it's not continuous, if it's not built into data ops processes, it's not going to get where it needs to go. And I think that's what you were leading back to, Mitch, too. And I think that, on the machine learning side, what we, again, we were talking about the data quality, data integrity of what we learned. So we had a major pharmaceutical, one of the largest in the world. They were working on innovation for vaccines, and we're big in their vaccines group. And they were feeding. And so a lot of the proprietary stuff in innovation, I know what Devani's saying as far as like all these things that you can have access to from a data and model, but their innovation is built on their machine learning and AI. They're building it internally. Well, the data was bad. So guess what? They didn't get artificial, like I say, it's not artificial smart. It could be artificial dumb intelligence. It's all based on the quality of the data it reads from. And their data was bad. So they didn't have success. In fact, and these are hundreds of millions of dollars of innovation losses. And this is proprietary to folks. So it is very critical that as you try to, and I understand, people try to bias out the bad data and such, but it depends. That might work or it might not. Your best bet is to make sure you've got good data that feeds those models, build a data ops process to drive that automation around that testing. Their case, they were pulling every medical thing that ever happened to a rat since 1974, every single. So it was an incredible amount of data, but nobody was checking that to make sure it was correct. And so machine learning and AI is going to it's always going to be biased, in my opinion, what you're trying to get to. And you've got to trust your data is going to take you on the right path. That's what our experience was.
Data integrity is kind of everything, it sounds like.
Yeah, actually, that's a very valid point, right? Means it is always use case dependent. Means if your use case is proprietary, you need to have your internal models. If your use case is generic, then you can definitely use the open source models as well. Curtis, the example that you shared, I can share, that this is not the only case. We have seen these type of issues across the different organization as well, right? In the BFSI areas, they all want to have these models as their differentiators. And that's where the data integrity becomes paramount. If you feed in bad data, it's just garbage in, garbage out. So the same pieces come in. Yeah, but interesting. The second piece which I have seen, the trend which has made this data ops very different is also the cloud modernization journey. Earlier, it was just all on-premise and as you said, right, the mainframe pieces. But now with the cloud data, you have to have different consideration into place. One consideration is how you can leverage the cloud capacity, and it can just means consuming large amount of data in a very short span of time. Second is how you can just also ensure that the data is secure. So those security elements, which then translates into your encryption of the data, making it tokenization and then de-tokenizing it as well, effectively managing it with the cloud cost. So these different considerations also needs to be played into the data pipeline that we create. And that also becomes a part of the data ops on how we are going to integrate these pieces. How are we going to ensure that the data ops can help in the cost optimization? It can also help in the security consideration into place. So these are the two major things that I have seen, means the cloud modernization and the machine learning aspects, which are now making this data ops evolve and making the, you can say, value of data integrity paramount. Maybe your thoughts on what the trends these are coming for you.
I'm curious, Arun, building off of what you said. Does anyone have a really good example, either for themselves or one of your customers, companies you've worked with, of where we all want software to help us as a competitive advantage, our ability to deliver the right software at the right time. I think it really means the right software or the right data, right? To be able to do that. By taking a data ops approach. Any really good examples where you can see the business thinks more strategically, operates more effectively, is more competitive, some dynamic that, the C-level folks are going to say that was worth it. Whatever they did back in those groups that do all this work, that helped a lot.
Yeah, we have multiple examples. One I can share, and then we can just build on it, right? So one is during the COVID time, when the different companies, or particularly I'm talking about the BFSI area, the banking and financial services, they had to have the cash reserve ratios at their end, right? They have to amount for the uncertainties which is there, and then they have to build up the amount at their end so that they can adjust to the loan defaults which can happen. And it was the time of March 2020, around that frame, right, where there was a lot of change. Market has changed abruptly, and everybody was anticipating that there will be large amount of loan default. So the companies or the large financial institutions, they were struggling with it, because they have to just report these type of cash reserves within a short span of time to regulatory bodies. Now, what does that mean? All these cash reserves and the loan default are being predicted by the machine learning models. So it means these models have to be updated to the new data in a very short span of time. Otherwise, they will have regulatory impact. They will have their balance sheet impact, right? So this struggle, this just made sure that the cloud can be leveraged. It also made sure that how your systems can be more automated, how you can just feed in the right data so that you can just predict the right amount of impact that you are going to have on the loan default and essentially on your balance sheet. So that was one example where we have seen even the CEOs, because it is going to impact their earning calls. So CEOs getting involved in the outcome of the data models which are going to be there. And it comes to my mind where I have seen that not only one company, but almost all the large companies, they were impacted by this, and they have to just address it.
Other examples or build on that one?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a specific example, but literally everything that we're building at TriMedics right now is data products. I think Devani made this point earlier. What we realized is, yes, we've got technicians in hospitals repairing and maintaining medical equipment, but that workflow generates lots of really valuable data. And so that's been the core of our investment over the last 4 or 5 years that we've been going through this digital transformation as a company. Everything that we're building is built on data. So we literally built an informatics platform, essentially how we're describing it, that we use to present data in different ways to different personas, of our customers that want to understand different aspects of their install base. And I guess to use Arun's example of COVID, if you remember early COVID, one of the big scrambles was for ventilators, appropriate ventilator equipment. I had in my state, a good friend of mine does some consulting with the state, and we had top leaders at the state reaching out to TriMedics to help understand what hospitals do we have in Indiana that may not be properly equipped. And I think that was not necessarily a turning point. We had started this journey, but really just affirmed that our product investments really need to be in and around our data.
Yeah, I have an interesting one. We were working with an earlier stage company in the telemedicine space. And at the beginning of COVID, their business went crazy, as you guys can imagine. And they had started a process around setting up a data ops team and building out a data ops team, but the team was very focused on their automation capabilities, a lot of the stuff that Arun was talking about. And this was a company that has, very modern. They have a lot of machine learning models, a lot of automation. And I think if you looked at it from a surface perspective, you would say they're kind of, meeting all the best practices. They've implemented everything you would expect. What they were finding was that they were missing this human in the loop element, which a lot of organizations also find in their DevOps journeys, where they think we're going to automate all of our CI/CD pipelines, and then they forget that, those pipelines break all the time. Like these things require, we're still not quite at the point with like general AI where we can go on vacation and let the system do its own thing. And so they ended up investing very deeply in, just some workflows and human in the loop processes that would allow for better interruption of problems when there was an issue, like really quickly identifying it, bringing all the right stakeholders into the room. And one of the things that they said is, if you don't know what the ultimate goal of the data is, then you don't know if the data actually has integrity or not, because the outcome ultimately drives what integrity means. And so being able to go in and do that ended up giving them some really fabulous data. It stopped them from growing too early in certain areas that you would see little blips. And they started being able to, kind of bring together lots of different sources of data, and based on all the conversations we had, it was really transformational for their organization.
Well, can I add the fourth wheel to this?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So we talked about healthcare. We've talked about banks. I'll talk about utilities, and I'll give you the name: Duke Energy, the big giant Northeast provider. So the use cases is that with ESG and all these use cases, you should really note, are multi-million-dollar problems. These are not small issues. These are huge things being solved. In this case, they have to monitor for any type of leak of natural gas in their entire system at all times. If the regulators find out first, they get fined. They got to find it, fix it before they do. So data ops is really about speed and velocity, right? We got to be able to do this quickly. So their use cases is that they would overlay all their gas pump and monitoring data, on top of it, all the GIS data, satellite imagery, and then be able to tie that all together in real time so that they could spot gas leaks and get somebody out there, get it fixed before we get in trouble. That's really what it boils down to, and big trouble. I think if they did not have that automation in those processes, with data ops driving the entire, bringing all that different data together, it would never happen, right? And they're a great customer of ours. But the thing I think was interesting, they saw something going on outside the Mercedes plant there in North Carolina, and they rolled the trucks. And when they got there, they found out they had left open the door on the warehouse, and they used methane driving forklifts, and they were actually catching that data real time as they left the door open. So I just want to tell you, this is the kind of things of speed and velocity of these problems that can that you've got to be on top of. And this is what this is here for, data ops, to allow you to have that kind of response.
It's amazing when the integrity and the access to the data is to be able to do all those things, right? Because that's half the battle. Is like, where is this? Who's got it? How do we get to it? We've solved all those problems. You're a long ways down the road. Well, let's do this. We have just a few minutes left. I wish we had another hour to tack on to this conversation, because I'd love to hear some more stories as well as experiences. If there's been a takeaway, and you've had multiple, I'm sure, in your careers and working in data and data ops, that you would share with someone maybe who's earlier in the process of adopting this in their organization or maybe themselves, what is a takeaway that you would say, boy, if I knew this, or it took me a while to figure this out, but once I kind of got that really helped me accelerate our path, my path, whatever it is. Arun, do you want to start us out?
Sure. So I say that one thing that we have learned from multiple implementations that we have done across in the different companies is going by a well-defined tool can definitely help you to gain that advantage. And the second piece is that it requires a close coordination across the data, testing, as well as the applications teams to be together so that they can just have this data ops. And so you need to have collaboration across, getting it all the stakeholders together and leverage the tools which are out there in the market. It can give you a good start, and it can just make sure that the data ops values that you can expect, they are derived.
Great. Andrew, jump in.
Yeah, I think I'll just go back to my opening remark and say my one takeaway would be to not be afraid to start with data on your DevOps journey. Don't feel like this is DevOps is software engineering capability, because it's, like I said, was tremendously impactful for us starting with our data teams.
Very cool. Curse, I'm saving you for last. So Devani.
I think that my biggest piece of advice would be, don't let perfect be the enemy of done. I think very often people say, here's my 2-year roadmap, and we're going to, plan out all these pieces. And those are the projects that always seem to just drag on and on and on and on and never really get to a great place. Every great transformation I've seen in this space has started with a small team with a great mandate and strong support from the executive team to do what it takes, because this is a coordination heavy area. It does involve lots of different teams, lots of different systems. These days, there are lots of, off the shelf tools and more coming that can help with that journey. But even there, I think before you've, and this is a little bit against my company, but before you've gone and spent the money on all the technology, really look at what you've got in-house, what expertise you've got in-house, and use that as a starting point. And it's okay to take baby steps along the way there, because they do add up over time and reinforce themselves.
I think that's great advice. Okay, Curtis, let you bring it home one more time.
I think those are, I don't think I could top those three. It's perfect. And really kind of the idea is that what we look at the world is that executive sponsorship, being able to get the people that really have a vision involved, and often getting their focus, because there's so many different things going on, to make them understand how important this process is going to be to everyone in the organization. I will just give you a hint. This is the thing I use and I've learned, is that if you focus on a problem that is millions of dollars, you can get people's attention. Okay. So what I tell everyone is there's lots of things out there you can do, but when you find those kinds of problems and you go to a CIO or a CEO and you say, you've got $50 million and know your customer fines at the bank, and we can solve that. You've got tens of millions of dollars. You've got hundreds of millions of innovation. When you throw those kind of numbers out, trust me, you can get change made, but you've got to really, to me, that is a helpful part. Don't have to have it, but I will promise you, if you can find those problems and solve them for companies, they will work with you, and it'll change minds.
Well, to connect the dot, I guess I'll wrap it up this way. Finding those BHAG, those meeting problems that really can make a difference for your organization. You don't have to solve it perfectly, right? You can, to borrow a phrase or co-opt it from the Martian Matt Damon, you can DevOps the what out of it, right? Go after it and do this incrementally and make progress. And that's how you not only course correct, but you help yourself learn along the way, because there's an awful lot of things you pick up by doing, not just by planning. So great conversation. Super excited about data ops, and I'm encouraged for all the data wonks in the world that they can be part of this process too. So my thanks to you, Curtis, and Devani, and Andrew, and Arun for joining us today. Thanks for sharing your expertise. By the way, Arun, congrats on the, I think you're partner of the year with if Tricentis, if I remember right. Nice.
Yep, definitely.
Good work, dude. So give others something to aspire to. Congrats to you all. Thanks to everybody that's joined us today. Hey, I want to point out that we have a DevOps Unbound live roundtable coming up on July 27th. Now, it's this kind of a format, but with the audience engaged with us in chat and discussion, and that tracks to a lot of times where the audience goes and with their questions and response, and we adjust and morph. And you're talking about DevOpsing the what out of it. That's kind of what we do on those live roundtables. So go check out the devos.com website, the webinar section, July 27th, and I hope you will join us. The topic is living at the intersection between testing and observability. There is an intersection there. It's a pretty interesting conversation. I will have a good time. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of DevOps Unbound.
Thanks, Mitch, for hosting us. Thank you.
Welcome to the Haunted Hacker podcast. This is the end of June, and this is my fourth one for the month. So I packed in once a week for the whole entire month in 1 week. So it's been pretty awesome. Tonight we have a really awesome guest. I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'll let him introduce himself after we talk about the news. But he is the face and voice behind the Barcode podcast, which I'm really excited to talk to him about. So anyways, news really quick. Working on a couple of speaking engagements, working on another guest for the show mid-July. I'm working with this PR firm, which should be pretty interesting. He's a retired Navy officer that did some crazy stuff in the military. So we'll dive into him later next month. Really looking forward to that. Other than that, not a ton of news. One big piece of news for Hackers for Vets, we got our first donation this week. A large donation. I won't disclose who it was yet because they're putting together a whole PR thing about the release and about the donation. So Hackers for Vets is a real thing, and we now have money to start giving back. So I'll be opening up submissions for potential candidates for the awards really soon, just so you know, and you have a heads up. In order to qualify for the awards, you have to be an honorably discharged veteran. Years of service doesn't matter, and you have to provide a DD-214 for proof verification. And of course, you can black out all of your DD-214 except for the name, date, and honorable discharge. Other than that, write a letter. Let me know why you deserve to have the award to help you get into cyber and kind of what you did in the military. And I'll put all this together, review them, pick the one, boom. We have our first award. So I'm really jazzed about that. Okay, so without further ado, and I won't waste any more time, tonight we have Chris Glanson on, who is the Barcode voice. And I'm really excited because I was looking through the podcast and I was looking at some of the guests you had. And some of the guests have been really phenomenal. I think we have a couple guests in common. But yeah, I'm really anxious to hear your story. So Chris, why don't you take it away? Tell us about yourself. And bro, thanks a lot for being here. It means a lot.
Nah, man, thank you. The Haunted Hacker, man. I made it. I officially made it. No, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be on the show, man. I'm a big fan of your show as well. And it's crazy because not too many people hear my story. I'm normally on the other side, and I'm talking to people who have these amazing, phenomenal stories, and I don't get to talk about mine too much. And it may be because mine is not as dramatic as theirs, but I'll tell it to you anyway.
Absolutely.
So I came up through IT. Growing up, I was always into tech. Tech was always a part of my life and what I enjoyed doing. And I think that professionally, I decided to go in that direction in the late 90s. I was a warehouse worker at the time, and I had my first kid. And I was like, man, I can't support my kid making minimum wage. My apartment at the time was like $400 a month, plus food, plus my phone bill. And I was like, this is not going to cut it. So I think I looked in the newspaper and this small local cable company was hiring, and they were hiring for tech support. And I was like, you know what? That sounds cool. And yeah. Well, at the time I didn't know. I was like, man, let me go check it out, because I wanted to get into a big firm and some firm that was established, because I needed that job stability.
Right.
So I went in and I interviewed, and the position was for tech support. And I think it paid $11.52 an hour. And I was like, shit, I made it. And I got that job. I was like, I'm done. This is it. Plus free cable, half off pay-per-view, like bonus. Right? Yeah, forget you. I don't think I went back to the warehouse. I just said, look, I'm not coming in anymore. Let's go. And so I was doing tech support. I was supporting the internet service, which has just rolled out. I was supporting digital cable boxes, which just rolled out. So it was on the technical side, but it was a new technology for me. So it really put me on the front line of cutting edge technology. And Comcast ended up acquiring this company about a year later. So when they came in, things really accelerated. So I really got exposed to a lot of different technology at that time. And it's ironic because I was also learning at the time, how to hack these cable boxes, how Tex would show me how to get, how to hack the filters, the hardware filters on the pole outside to get free HBO. And it's ironic because this was long before my security career kicked off.
Oh yeah.
So now I think back at it, I was like, man, was that the seed that planted my interest? I don't know. But I really enjoyed the technology piece. I enjoyed the troubleshooting, and just getting into the unknown and helping people fix problems. And I think that was my passion then. So I stayed with it, but I eventually morphed more into the IT space. So from that, I ended up doing help desk work. I did desktop support work, software support work for a startup software company. Yeah, that was crazy. But they did have a beer fridge, which was the first time I had a beer fridge at work, which was bonus.
And you're like, I made it.
Yeah, and I was like, I really made it. Because you couldn't do that back then unless you were a startup. You can get away with it. And this may have been like, 2006 or 7 at that point. But then, I was getting introduced to different technologies. Like at that software startup company, everything was built on Gen 2 Linux, which I've never even touched Linux before. And to be able to start building servers off Gen 2 Linux, it was like, I started learning the syntax, and it was really a learning progression for me.
For sure.
Then around the 2012 timeframe was when I shifted my focus to security. I've worked with security individuals up until that point. When my friends in security were talking to me about Backtrack, which was formerly,
old
Cali, old school. And I'm just like listening to him tell me what Backtrack is doing and what he can do. And he was like, yo, you want to steal your neighbor's Wi-Fi? I'm like, nah, I'm good. But it was like, it's, it gets you thinking. It's like, it's different. And it was more than technology for me. It was layers to it. It was the technology. It was the social aspect. It was the enigma of security and the illusion of things. It was all new to me. Although
I was about to say the illusion of security, I think, is what really gets people going too.
The illusion of security and just not knowing how things are done. It's like you're an illusionist. Like, I want to know more. I want to know how you did that trick.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was just the most captivating for me, to be able to peel back those layers and see how these tricks are done. So lucky enough, I was good friends with someone in security at the time who left the company I was with to go basically start up a security department at a small bank here in Delaware. And he knew I was interested. He said, look, do you want to come with me? And I'll bring you in. And I knew at that time, if I tried to get into security, it would be a harder task for me than to be able to help, have him help me get in. So he brought me in. I was a level 1 security analyst. This was 2012, and I was hooked almost day one. I think day 2, they said, do you want to go do some training? I said, yeah, I'll go do some training. They were going to send me down to Hacker Halted in Atlanta.
Nice.
And I was like, yo, what am I getting into? I'm scrolling through the website. I was like, these dudes with hoodies on. And I was like, this looks cool. And it was called Angels and Demons. Angels and Demons was a theme that year. I was like, this shit looks cool. So I picked out a boot camp down there. And the boot camp was like, intro to cybersecurity, something like super high level. I was like, all right, I can do this. And like a week before Hacker Halted started, they called me and said, look, that class got scratched. You got to pick something else. I was like, all right, well, tell me what else I can pick. And there was like advanced forensics or the CEH. I'm like,
you went for the CEH, didn't you?
I went for CEH. And I think it was CEH version 8.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like version 8. And so I went down there and it just opened the floodgates. And I'm just hearing terms I've never heard before. They're like speaking foreign languages and writing hieroglyphics on the board. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But I learned enough during that time and I fell short on the exam. But not by much. But I came back home. I knew what I had to work on. I put my mind to it and I got it maybe a month later. So I think it was a good thing that happened because then again, it started opening my mind a little bit more. But yeah, been hooked ever since. And it just, the train hasn't stopped. It keeps on rolling. So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's my story.
I think a lot of us start off in support of some sort. My very first job was actually with Jason Street. We worked in the same location, the same office, same floor. We didn't know each other, but we worked for a software support company. And I think my support career lasted all of about 3 weeks, maybe. When they finally realized that when I had to put people on hold and throw my headset down and cuss people out, that it probably wasn't meant for me. So they put me into beta testing, which I thought was really cool. But the support world, I don't think you can legitimately be called a security professional unless you've had to endure at least a year of that nonsense bullshit that people deal with as support. To me, that's hell. Like, yeah. I don't know how I got through that, but when I get the call and an older gentleman, bless his heart, got a computer for Christmas and he's got the drink tray open and the pedal on the floor, I about lost my shit. And that was it for me. I was like, I'm done. Either I'm quitting or you got to find me something else. But yeah, it's really interesting. The CEH, I think I was version 1 of the CEH. I was one of the very first classes.
Jeez. Wow.
I was really disenfranchised with that though, because when I went in, I took the class just because my boss at Verizon, Jim McConnell, a lot of you guys have seen him on the podcast, great dude, decided to pay for it, said, hey, do you want this? And I was like, sure, I'll take it. But when I got into the classroom and they were messing with Donald Dick, which is a hacking tool from way too long ago, that and the Unabomber, the mail bomber, I thought, this is probably not the right server for me. Because of the fact that it was so old school and it was so point and click. Yeah. And to me, the whole course seemed like clickbait.
Yeah,
but from that point on, they've gotten a lot better. Of course, they've had their issues over the past, but who doesn't?
Well, EC Council's had issues. Yeah.
Big issues. But hopefully they'll pull through that. Hopefully they'll get back on track, because the DoD requires a lot of people to have that CEH in order to be a DoD contractor, which blows my mind, but whatever. So tell me what it's like for you as a podcast host because you've had some really cool people on there. You've had Gummo on there. You've got a couple of people, HD Moore. Funny stories about HD back in Austin, hackers in Austin. Anyways, different story. So tell me what it's like for you as a podcaster, kind of what you look for in guests and just kind of like the behind the scenes, man, what goes into, because I don't think a lot of people know how much time and effort actually goes into what we do to provide content.
It's insane. It's truly insane. And when I got into it, I didn't have someone telling me that it's insane. I had to learn that on my own. So, but what helped me was my practitioner background and coming up through security, being able to speak that lingo, being able to, understand the pain points that my guests are talking about and solving for, knowing a little bit of hacker history in terms of some of the folks that I knew coming in I wanted to talk to. So I wasn't scouring forums trying to find guests. Like it was almost when I reach out, you could check my stats as far as a practitioner and they knew that, I've been through the trenches. I've been on the front line. So I think that helped a little bit. If I got into podcasting and I was, doing a horror podcast or something like that, it might be a little bit different. And, but yeah, I mean, coming into it, I started my podcast not long ago. I mean, it was during the pandemic I think it was right around April 2020 where I decided, all right, let's do it. I've had the idea for years, but I think that pandemic, and as disastrous as it is, it allowed me to be able to start this. And I don't think I would have started it without having that time, and then also having the time that my guests were dedicating to me.
Right.
A lot of my guests right up front were, speaking at conferences, speaking at forums, and I thought to myself, let's help get that word out and have them on the show. So right off the bat, man, it was really good. It kept going. And what I've found is that everybody that I speak to, 99% are willing to come on and share their ideas. And I'm sure you feel the same way. It's this industry is so helpful with trying to educate others and share their stories. And I don't know of another industry like that as well. So I took advantage of that too. This is
100%.
And I like to be educated. They like to educate, and people like to be educated. So it's a win-win-win. And that's why I do it.
I have a question. Sure. Where did you get the barcode idea and the concept of Tony?
Oh man. Well, the barcode concept stems back maybe 5-6 years ago. I was going to do a podcast called I think it was going to be called Triple Threat. And it was me and 2 other guys that I worked with, and we were just going to talk about like data breaches and drinking. Nice. And this was pre-pandemic, so it was hard to get everybody together because we wanted to do like an on-site podcast, and it didn't work. So when this idea came up, I was like, man, I want to stick with this theme. And going back to the whole concept, the concept spawned from the lack of interaction during the pandemic. So we weren't able to get the Black Hat. We weren't able to get the DEF CON. We weren't able to get to B-sides and do these happy hours after the conference talks. And, from my experience, a lot of the great ideas are born out of those happy hours and those talks at the bar, because people feel laid back. They feel non-pressured. So I was like, well, if I can transplant that into audio and do it that way, then that's what I'm going for. And it took me a lot of time to ramp up. But yeah, I think I got there. Tony was brought in because I know I needed someone to make drinks. And I didn't want to make drinks and talk. And Tony, if you don't know, he's not a real bartender. So it took him some time to like get up to the terminology too. He he works at a liquor store, so it's close, but not a real bartender. Nice. But yeah, that's how the concept goes, and we're just trying to keep pushing it, trying to keep innovating. And Mike, it's creating content consistently like you do at a very high level. It takes a lot of time. Like you said, it's more time than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, I think it's a time, and not only that, but for someone with neurodiversity, it's a little bit more difficult to like really put on that social face and really like jump in there. And I think that drains me a lot. But I enjoy it because, like you said, every guest that I have, I learn something from. And I'm big about learning from different people and different situations. But I think that, having guests on that have cool backgrounds, that have something to share, I learn so much from them. And I feel like, being able to give them a voice is really important. Like that to me is the key to my success, is putting somebody else's voice out there.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you have guests that you see constantly on rotation in other podcasts. Mm-hmm. My vision is to get people on my show that should be in a routine of podcast, but that aren't. You need to give them a voice, and hopefully from there, as a podcaster, there's no better feeling than see that person, go on another show the next month and continue their success.
Right.
So yeah, that's. Yeah,
and then meeting the people with the really cool stories too. So when we first cranked up the Haunted Hacker, which is going on 2 years. It'll be 2 years in October. We had guys from my past that were on the show, from my my colorful past, which was really interesting because a lot of them didn't get along, and we ended up there were fights, there were arguments, there was threats. I mean, when you deal with that type of person, that type of group, and in that sensitive situation, it never fails. There's always somebody who gets pissed off. I think at one point I had Sebastian Dante Alexander on my show, and him and another guy went at it over who the real, Sebastian Dante Alexander was, who he is. And it just, as a podcast, you sit back and go, what the fuck, you guys sort that out. All I do is do the interviews. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that kind of drama comes up.
I got a question for you real quick.
Sure.
As you're doing these interviews. So for me, insecurity and you as well, when you're doing interviews, do you find it hard to hold back?
I do.
With you know what I mean? With your opinions, with going on a long explanation, because as an architect, I like to dive deep.
Right. Yeah, totally. There are times when we're talking about a topic that I really have a lot of passion for, which is basically anything anti-government. But if we talk about something if we talk about something that involves politics or geopolitics or the global threatscape or whatever, then I get really animated. UFOs. I get really intense because those are things that people don't listen to. They're things that people don't think about, and everyday people, it just doesn't cross their mind. And that's the type of shit that I want to say it loud enough to where people wake the fuck up and hear the message, even if it's just a piece of it. Maybe they'll listen to it and open their eyes and go, fuck, maybe there is more going on behind the curtain, this veil that we see of a government. Maybe there's more shit going on that we don't know about. Yeah. And that's kind of what I want to get. After working in intelligence for so long and having guests that have worked in intelligence, we all have the same story. There's more shit that goes on, and if you knew, your brain was going. But those are the things I try to push.
You're passionate about that, so when you're on that topic, you're like you're sweating.
Yeah,
but like you can't go. Down this path of talking about it, but yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't want to do diatribes, and I try to avoid that. There are times when I break off into a diatribe and apologize later for it, but hey, it's life, and
you still got to get your point across. Yeah.
Again, one thing that I really appreciate about the podcast is it's very genuine, it's very raw, and I just want people in their rawest form. Like if someone's pissed off about something, I want to hear about it. And don't worry about getting angry because I'll probably get angry right with you. This is the type of shit that people didn't hear about. So yeah, like podcasting is definitely, I think the pandemic really spun up a shit ton of podcasts. Like that's when I started mine, started ours. And it got, when I looked outside of what we were doing and seeing all the various podcasts that were coming up, some were fantastic. Some were maybe an excuse to have a social hour or whatever. But in general, it really gave us a platform. And the pandemic, if it wasn't for the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have a podcast. So pandemic was a positive thing for me, even though I caught COVID like 6 times.
Did you really?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm lucky. I haven't caught it yet. But I'm going to Black Hat DEF CON again, so we'll see what happens.
I may or may not make it out there.
I think I caught it in April, and I've been boosted and everything, and everything's fine, but all the masks came off, and next thing you know, I'm like, oh, my allergies are real bad. And everybody's like, no, you got it. And I was like, yeah. Okay. And I died for 2 weeks. So
I'm going to go off on one of those tangents just for a brief second, talk about the pandemic. Did you guys know that Pfizer just came out with a new vaccination, and the advertisement and the supporting data behind it, the new vaccination is, oh, the other one doesn't work anymore. It was meant for the very first strain. So here,
I did not hear that yet.
I almost died from the vaccination. And now they're telling me, oh, we have another great version of it coming out that you'll have to get for Omicron. I'm like, nah, fuck y'all, man. I'm done.
That's just going to push you over the ledge.
Right, I'm done, man.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm with you.
Yeah. But that's,
it's hard. For me, I it went into my lungs and I had asthma. So like, of course, when I hear something about like going into my lungs, like, of course that scares me. And like, apparently it was a little bit worse for me, but like, you know, I've been vaccinated, but again, I don't know, maybe it wasn't that bad if even without it. Cause you know, like, and we've talked about this before, it's like the flu now, right? Like at this point, you know, people are
today. Who knows what it's going to be tomorrow? Because it depends on who is affecting too. It's like there is no blueprint on how to handle it. You don't know how it's going to affect you. And again, I haven't had it yet, so I don't know. But from those that I've seen have it, you know, it's varying degrees of pain and suffering
and hell. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, and I think that's another one of those things that, you know, the government doesn't know enough about the virus to really be 100% effective. So instead of looking bad like they don't know 100%, they act like they know 100% and just fuck everybody. So I have a pet peeve about that. So along with podcasting, I see that you're on the InfraGard board, which is really fucking cool. Also, some of the other stuff you've done. Tell me about the beginnings of really blowing up in cyber. I know that everybody hits that one moment in time where the doors seem to, instead of having to pull it open, it seems to be an automatic door and we walk right in. And I feel like a lot of us who have gotten to a certain point in our career or to a certain level of, I guess being occasionally around people and people knowing who you are, what was that point that brought you from, hey, I want to be in cybersecurity to, I'm fucking here and I'm here to stay and this is me. So what was that point for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say maybe just a year or two after I got into it. I think it was the timing. When I got into it, I think a year after I got into it is when ransomware really hit. Like ransomware hit, Silk Road hit, Deep Web hit, Bitcoin hit. So I was always interested in it, but I think like within the year that I got into it, things were taking off and it just really captivated me on what was happening. And it didn't feel like a job anymore. I think that was the threshold that I crossed where I would come home from work and read forums on security and be truly interested in it. And even to this day, I mean, Mike, you and Kim know that I'm on LinkedIn reading articles, I'm reposting, 3, 4, 5 a.m. And it's just one of those aspects that, you know, I feel like it's no longer a job. And I think once you get there, then you've really made it.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I tell everybody, it's really weird for me when I meet somebody new and they're like, oh, hey, I love the podcast. And I'm like, wait a minute, you listen to it? Like, you really sit down and listen to that shit? And people are like, yeah. And I think that still shocks me that people are actually want to hear what I have to say. Do you still have that same? I do. I call it imposter syndrome, just like anybody else who's a public speaker. I think podcasting, you have that same imposter syndrome where how did this happen to me type deal.
Yeah, I do too. And the way that I circumvent that is just being able to discuss things that interest me. And I almost put everything else to the side. So like me and you have a conversation. It's about what I'm passionate about. It's about what you're passionate about. And the outcome of that, someone is benefiting from. And it's almost, I have to have that mindset, because if it comes to a point where it's not that, I don't think that you should be doing it.
Right. Yeah. Another thing too is Jason Street told me one time before I spoke over in England, you know, I get nervous before every podcast, before every public talk I give, no matter where it's at. And Jason gave me some really vital information. At one point, I was texting him on the bus on the metro in Houston.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Mark Bronner, who is the Managing Director and Global Head of Managed Services over at Kroll, and David Creed, who is the Vice President of Business Development Worldwide Service Provider Partnerships over at Armis. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Great.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Kroll recently announced a partnership with Armis, and I'm interested in hearing about what you guys kind of both bring to this partnership. But first, I wonder if for those of you playing at home who might not know about Kroll or Armis, maybe Mark, can you tell us a little bit about Kroll, and then David, you can tell us a little bit about Armis.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, Kroll. I like to think of Kroll as one of the best kept secrets in cybersecurity. We've been around for a long time, many decades in corporate investigations, intelligence, cybersecurity, and a whole array of risk management services. And I'm part of our cyber risk practice. My time with Kroll goes back over 20 years, and we provide a full service, full suite of cyber risk, both proactive, instant response, investigative, and managed services to our customers around the world. We're about 18 countries, and our entire firm is about 6,000 folks around the world. And so I head up, as you say, our managed services business and spend a lot of time in that space, but have been in all facets, and really thankful to be on the show today and to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing.
Excellent. David, tell us a little bit about Armis.
Absolutely. Boy, Armis, as Kroll is a services company, Armis is a product company, right? And we'll call Armis a young and innovative and also a disruptor of what we do. So we are a software company that is 6 years old. And what we do is we approach the market a little differently. Many organizations now have software that is agent-based, that loads on specific devices. But Armis, the Armis platform, which is cloud-based, really is about being agentless. And it's about seeing all the devices, not just endpoints or servers. So Armis is this unified platform that can see everything for visibility and then can also understand the threats. So it's almost like Armis can handle the new frontier of all these devices that are being added, no matter if it's operational technology, healthcare, or just devices in the enterprise.
All right, great. So I know this partnership that your two companies have entered into is really kind of focused on the operational technology and industrial control system space, which I know has been getting a lot of attention lately because of all of the cyber attacks that have been happening, and there's operational technology is a very, very large part of kind of the cyber threat equation these days. And when we're talking about critical infrastructure, and now that the White House has got its executive orders related to the cybersecurity of our nation's infrastructure, definitely an important conversation to have. And so this sounds like your partnership is kind of right up that alley.
Well, the timing is great. I mean, we've, as you've seen in the news and elsewhere, right, protecting all types of assets that are within our corporate environments and our networks is really critical, increasingly critical. And as security practitioners, we've done a really good job, I think, over the years of focusing on traditional systems, right, our laptops, our servers, our traditional endpoints, but we've got to recognize that today, a typical corporate network consists of all sorts of things that aren't, those traditional devices, and lots of Internet of Things devices, whether it's a thermostat or a camera, to industry-specific devices in those, OT and ICS environments. And we need to make sure that we're identifying those, protecting those, and providing the same level of rigor around those as we do with our traditional systems. And that's where, for us, Armis is a really terrific technology to help us better protect our customers and better address those risks that are continuing to increase in that space.
So, Mark, when you were, talking with Kroll and trying to figure out the relationship between the two companies, how did you kind of decide that Kroll would be a really good company for you guys to partner up with, and along with that, what makes it the operational technology space and ICS space, in particular that kind of drew you to this?
Well, I'd say for Kroll and working with Armis, we have been looking and have talked to a number of companies over the years to find ways to bring what we think is the leading technologies of the day to our customers and to help them better protect their environments, to create a defensible security strategy. And we know, for a long time, if you look at the top 20, critical controls or security controls for any company, the idea of knowing what's on your network, being able to identify assets, being able to protect those assets is job one. And so this is a space where there's been products in the past that do some of the similar things, but we've never before found a product that does all the things that Armis can bring to the table to help a company both identify and protect against threats from these devices. And the time is now, right? We're starting to see in the last year or so, and especially since the pandemic, threat actors are going back and really targeting vulnerabilities in devices to find their way into networks, to find their way into systems. And we've done a pretty good job of protecting the endpoints. And now this lower hanging fruit of what do we do about all these other devices that have shown up in my environment that have a network stack, that have a threat profile that the threat actors are going after, and we need to be able to protect those. And so we've found a really terrific, what we believe is a really terrific combination of technology and people over at Armis to help us do that.
That's great. David, you mentioned that your agentless technology is, pretty much kind of runs it works for pretty much any vertical from healthcare to industrial control systems and such. Are you noticing that there are certain areas that are seeing more activity, if you will, from the cyber threat community, related to ransomware and just data breaches and hacking, that your technology is really being used increasingly?
Well, I would say based on recent news articles, right, it clearly is a focus around critical infrastructure. Mm-hmm. However, I think anytime ransomware comes into the picture, many times these hackers don't discriminate. They're looking for any vertical that can produce ransom. So I think that's the unique value that we also bring to the table with the Armis platform, is just by the sheer aspect that we can cover all these verticals with one platform, and the Kroll team doesn't need to have one product for operational technology and another product or platform for healthcare and a third product for something else. They can learn the Armis platform, and then that's going to be something that is universal towards any incident response engagement or risk assessment engagement or any services engagement that they're on. I think that's very compelling. One solution, learn it once, and then see how good you can get and how quickly you can do it.
So I kind of feel like, we do, Mark, to your point, we do a lot of focus a lot on maintaining the security of IT infrastructure. We don't really do it so much for the operational infrastructure. Do you think that that's changing, though, as we do see more of a focus on protecting the nation's infrastructure and to your point, the headlines that have come over the last couple of years as it relates to I would say attacks on, say, the water treatment plants and other kind of infrastructure organizations and companies that really traditionally have been kind of that walled moat or castle and moat, I guess you should say, network topology that really didn't need to have a cybersecurity plan in place before?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. These OT and IoT environments, traditionally can be a little more sensitive to manage and secure. And so some of the technologies that you want to think about employing to do that, may have limitations. But as you say, like we're starting to see the real manifestation of attacks against these types of devices and in these types of environments. They've always been there, right? It's not brand new, but the theory for a lot of organizations is now starting to bear itself out that yes, these in fact are environments that we need to pay close attention to and to pay better attention to protect our overall systems, our overall environment, and protect our customers.
Where do you guys see the cybersecurity space kind of moving as it relates to ICS and OT technologies? Do you think that we're going to kind of get into an area of technology or at least a place where we'll have kind of like one cybersecurity strategy to rule them all? Or do you think that we're always going to have kind of this separate but equal types of cybersecurity depending on the environment, whether it's operational technology or IT or something else?
Yeah, I'll jump on this question very quickly, and I think it's going to come down to the specific client, right, and kind of their culture. I know that some of our early adopter customers are doing what's called IT to OT digital transformation. Right? They want to see everything that's going on the manufacturing floor, just like they would, in the corporate boardroom, right? And that they're bringing everything together. However, I see other industries to where they're just like, you know what? Let's not touch anything unless we have to. And that's that wide array that you have nowadays with early adopters on one side and, laggards, decades laggards on the other. And security is going to be very challenging to provide across that spectrum.
And I would just add to that. I mean, I think having been in information security and forensics and IR for several decades now, a lot of the core blocking and tackling, the things that we need to think about as the CISOs and the security leaders that are entrusted with protecting our particular organization or entity, a lot of the things that we're thinking about are similar, and a lot of the low-hanging fruit that when breaches do happen, when you go back and look at the lessons learned, a lot of the stories are still the same as they were 20 years ago, as they are today. But the nature of the attacks, the details of those things have continued to get more sophisticated, get more nuanced, and that means we've got to pay extra special attention to those highly sensitive environments, as well as our entire footprint. It tends to bear itself out, in all the incident response work that our teams do globally. We do thousands of incidents a year. It's not uncommon to find that, like, man, the incident started with this one device sitting in a corner somewhere that we forgot about, or we forgot to patch, or we didn't have it as part of our endpoint program. And so to take things like Armis technology, bring visibility, bring light onto those devices, make sure we're not missing anything. That's huge, and that we believe will bear itself out in reducing the number of incidents and successful attacks for a typical organization.
Yeah, I keep hearing stories about these breaches that are occurring from a third-party provider or not somebody who's connecting to the network who has the permission to connect to the network, such as an HVAC company or something like that, actually, and ending up breaching the data network of another organization down the road. And so I feel like a lot of companies are now kind of understanding what the security implications are of having third parties connecting to their network. But it's just now kind of coming to light. And so having a technology that will enable them to kind of not only secure their IT, but their OT as well. I think, right now, in the past, I think it's really kind of been kind of secondary for a lot of organizations. So I'm really glad to hear that there is, there's a lot more emphasis being placed on OT and ICS systems and locking those down and keeping those protected, as well as the IT devices in an organization. Do you guys see a greater emphasis emphasis being placed in organizations now on ICS and OT security because, just because of what we've seen in the past and just because of the potential for breaches? It just seems like it is, to your point, kind of low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that trend will continue. As if you look at the data out there in the field, the number of these devices is growing. The number of the interest by threat actors. We've seen successful attacks becoming public, and so the word is out, right? We've got to continue to do a good job and a better job at protecting those. And, and for the average organization, the idea of getting our arms around these systems that underpin our businesses, it's not a new concept, right? But the need to do that, it's not just the domain of large enterprises anymore. Anybody can be a target, whether you're a small, utility, a small manufacturer or large. If you've got an internet footprint and you've got something that the threat actors can latch onto, you're potentially a target. And so we have to treat it that way, and know that, incidents are going to happen. We can't stop all attacks, but we want to put all the right tools in place so that when an attack does occur, we have visibility into that. We have the ability to quickly respond, quickly investigate, know what happened, and to contain that incident quickly. And so it takes a variety of technologies to do that. And, as we talked about here, I think, Armis is one of the best technologies I've seen in my career that covers a broad swath of devices and capabilities to help us bolster that protection for our customers and in the market. So something we're excited about.
And I would add that I believe Kroll is the real barometer for this services market. Right. 8 years ago, if I have my history right, they were one of the first to adopt EDR technology, right, to really get to the endpoint, right, when everybody else was doing forensics and, trying to learn what they could off the network. So I think this is a inflection point in the market as well, where, it'll be viewed, history will show that, Kroll was the first to move to, a platform, right, Armis in this aspect here, right, to get to all these other areas of technology that have not really had that level of service yet that they need, like ICS or OT, like healthcare devices, and down the line with other verticals. So I think this is going to be very interesting here.
Excellent. Well, Dave, one quick question, and then we'll wrap things up. You, in your role, have you noticed that that the security industry is seeing a lot more managed services providers actually kind of getting into security? We've been talking about managed services for near on 20 years now, but it seems like over the last couple of years, because of the depth of security these days, organizations just can't seem to do it themselves. And so more and more they need managed services providers such as Kroll, and they need trusted partners such as Armis to help them kind of get over that hump. So are you seeing an increase in organizations that are looking toward managed services to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Various factors, there's the talent shortage. And then there's also, the other end, do people know how to use these advanced, tools and platforms? Mm-hmm. And with an organization like Kroll that can come in and address a problem in a very short period of time, that gains the customer's confidence. And, the question is, can Kroll continue, to manage and monitor and make sure, whatever that issue was doesn't come back. And so that's like the sweet spot, moment for an organization like Kroll, and customers are clearly looking for that.
Excellent. Well, Mark and David, thank you so much for taking a couple minutes and talking with me today. This is a great partnership, great technology, and Kroll has been killing it for a while in this space. So thank you guys so much for your time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on.
All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more Techstrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
This is Techstrong TV.
Well, we're doing something extra special here. I'm being joined by Lance Knight. Lance is on assignment quote unquote, at a special location. We're going to get into what that's about. Lance is president and COO with ConnectAll. Lance, great to be talking with you. How are you doing today?
It's always my pleasure, Mitch, to talk to you and the team over there at DevOps.com and Techstrong.
You as well. I feel like it's we should have a little bit of Willie Nelson on the road again in the background, but
Yes, I haven't been on the road in so long.
It is a little different feeling, is it? Well, so
weird, yeah.
But introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about ConnectAll, and then we want to get into where you're at.
Well, I'm Lance Knight. I'm the president and CEO of ConnectAll, and ConnectAll is all about helping companies adopt value stream management and adopt it in a way that's about the humans, right? And to get the most out of every piece of your software development process by seeing and measuring your software delivery value streams. And am I allowed to give it away now? So I'm here now.
There you go.
I'm at the Agile 2022 conference, the first one in person for years. And I'm just, I'm around the conference here, and I can see value stream management everywhere here, and everybody's talking about it as well. Every booth. Value Ops is over there. The Scrum people came to talk to me about value stream management. And me, I'm kind of loud on the topic. So everybody's coming
to have a little bit of passion about. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, a little bit. This is a small sliver of it. And, we've got our new value stream designer out. Remember we made that, we talked about that. And we're helping companies and people here understand how to look at your value streams all right here. And how, here's an interesting thing. And I'm working on some articles around this. And how does value stream management relate to Agile? And is value stream management important to Agile? And we did this speaking slot on this a year ago. It's not. Value stream management doesn't give two whatevers about Agile. Value stream management cares about it because it's a process inside your value stream to deliver software. So we want to become efficient at it. But whether it's Agile or waterfall, value stream management only knows that it's a thing that it needs to help people do better at by automating it and reducing waste and the whole value added work thing I've been talking about for a while.
Mm-hmm. We had that discussion too last time. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Very good point. It isn't locked into Agile or DevOps or waterfall or whatever the next thing coming down the road is, right?
No, it's its own thing. And you're looking for organizations where, you can look at your Agile process and figure out how to remove waste from even the Agile things that you've implemented.
Mm-hmm.
From a developer perspective, I got another thing I'm working on too, where it says that the developers shouldn't even worry about value stream management. Operational people should be looking at it, or executives in the organization. So how do I remove waste from the process we're doing, whether that's Agile or whatever? So the developer is working on the value-added thing, which is writing code. So, and it's a great conference here for me to come and talk about how to think that way and remove waste from your software development and delivery and be more efficient and deliver better code and all of those things that are wasteful. And I know engineers love to just program. They don't want to copy things in different tickets or make requests for servers. They want to be able to just get their work done.
Yeah, get the job done.
And that's the value-added activity.
I'm curious. So Agile 2022 is in Nashville, correct?
Yeah, I was singing earlier. Did you hear it? Did you hear it? No, I was not.
You get one of those recording booths.
Singing.
You can drive down.
I can't even
record a song.
Yeah, I can't even hum a tune. So.
That's the phrase. I can't. If they put a handle on it, I could carry a tune, but without it, I'm out of luck or something like that. So it's great to be back in person, and I'm curious. Obviously, the theme is Agile, but I'm curious what is sort of the subtext as you look at it from the value stream perspective. Where are we in thinking about Agile in the world, and all the people coming back together and talking about that topic and all.
I mean, so like I said, Agile is important. It's part of process and methods. It's part of looking at it when you're managing and looking at how you're moving work through your organization, the value added and non-value added activities. Agile has a bunch of value added and non-value added activities, could be necessary. And you just want to be able to look at that based upon how you've implemented Agile. And, I think it's that next step where organizations have to start to get value out of the methods and processes they put in that are Agile.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use value stream management to help you do that. You can use value stream management to get metrics and analytics and information that you've never had before to make great business decisions on, am I putting the right things into my Agile process to ensure that I'm going to meet my business outcomes?
Mm-hmm.
So there's great synergy between value stream management and Agile, but value stream management doesn't really care about Agile.
One of the things that I think is really valuable about that, using the value word, is you aren't locked into how you're doing things, though. As you're going through, delivery cycles, whether you're doing DevOps or Agile,
right?
It's a continuous improvement process, right? So you may find, I'm spending too much time on non-value things that need to happen, but maybe I'm doing non-value things that don't need to happen, or I want to change the trajectory of where we are creating value. You can alter course, and I think that's one of the great things about the world we're in now versus something that might be more of a battleship to try to move. We can be more flexible, kind of a PT boat, if you will, to cruise and change direction.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about looking at how you're developing software, one team might be Agile, Scrum, one team might be Kanban, and you use the right one to achieve the goals so the teams can interwork together to deliver software to the waiting arms of the customer and to help with your digital transformation. There's just, I've been doing value stream stuff for a long time. So if you use it right, you can really change the way your organization works together. And it doesn't matter if somebody's Agile, somebody's Kanban, somebody's waterfall, right? You understand how those things work together and use systems thinking. And then you can automate some of that to make it be better. But it's also continual improvement, right? Andrew, who works for us, we said the other day, find a problem, map the value streams, remove waste, start all over. And just keep going at that and you become more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Is there, as you're at a conference like this, obviously people going are interested in Agile. Maybe they're, steeped in Agile.
Yeah.
Do you find that as you move into doing something like Agile or DevOps, is it earlier in the adoption curve? Is it mid or later in the adoption curve that people kind of go, okay, now we need to start thinking about value stream management? Wish I would have done it sooner, or maybe they are thinking about it earlier in the process. Yeah. What do you find?
I think that they are thinking about it now. And I think Agile is maturing. It's matured, right? The first team-based, Agile-based project I ran was in 1999. I don't want to go that old yet. But in 1999, I ran an Agile team. We developed the whole software shop floor system, and we worked in that way. But now it's starting to age, and it's starting to be honest, it's starting to become complicated because people have put things around it and have not made it as easy. And I don't think we, as an industry of software development and delivery, have companies really gotten the value that was promised out of Agile. And we're going to start to see them finally getting that value by looking at it in these other holistic ways, like in value streams and so on over time. And we'll see more things coming out. And it's really crucial today as we're pushing into digital transformations, and even as we're looking to be more efficient with what we have based upon the times. So I think Agile is going to become a 30-something soon. Not a teenager or an infant. It's going to become 30-something. not a no man like me, but it's going to mature into itself more and become more mainstay, and corporations will start to get the value out of being agile type organizations and the digital transformation that goes along with it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, certainly it's not a new thing. We've been doing this for a while. Hopefully we're perfecting and improving and growing. Sometimes we grow things a little bit too much and add too much stuff to it. I still, somewhere on a bookshelf back here, I still have my, was it Agile software development with Scrum? The old, the Schwaber and Beadle, I think, were the authors of that. That was sort of the Bible for me back when starting to do Agile and how to do Scrums and Scrum meetings and kind of getting the process. And I think those things are still all there today, that you can then apply value stream management on top of that. We're not like wildly swinging of what Agile is. We're building on those core concepts.
It's so value stream management will not change your Scrums. You shouldn't talk about it in stand-ups or anything like that. I was actually talking to Dave West. He's the CEO of Scrum.org. I worked with him in the past, and he comes up to give me a big hug, and I'm like, "Whoa, all right, I'll give you a big hug." But he was telling me how his children are getting older and mine are teenagers, and I remember being part of this agile stuff, in the 2000s and up and beyond. And it's getting old, it's getting defined, and we're going to see it take that next step where I think corporations are going to start to see why it's important. And then using value stream management principles, they'll be able to, truly remove the waste from the organization and get to that point where software development and delivery is more predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, the other thing I wanted to talk about today with you is announcing our new release, which is going to be 2.11. In 2.11, there's going to be great new metrics and analytics. It's going to have multiple value stream flows in it. So you can lay out multiple value streams for bigger organizations to help deliver that promise of software to help you be more predictable.
Mm-hmm. That sounds amazing. I'm excited to see it, especially as you talk about multiple value streams happening and at once. It's always, whether you're scaling DevOps or value stream management or whatever it might be, doing it on a small team where you can really focus and learn together, apply it to a well-defined, relatively domain. One thing, scaling to a couple teams is another. Taking it, and now let's get the whole organization in phases or whatever. But still, that's where the tough part. That's where the really rubber meets the road, I think.
Well, yeah. So part of that is creating multiple value streams and letting those roll up to an overall insights and analytics. So corporately, you can know where your projects are. Are they blocked? Doesn't matter whether you're working on that team, they can all roll up. These roll up analytics, these organizational structures, so that you can, as a bigger company, give something you never were able to give before. Mm-hmm. When the CEO says, "How's that project going?" you can just look it right up there and you'll know where you're at, what's blocking you, and drill in. And then be able to remove waste from your multiple value streams as well. So we're really excited about the value. And I've got to say, I've said the word value about 300 times already. Anyway, never mind. So
you need to write a book called Value, and that way you're talking about the book every time.
That's right. That's right. There you go. But it really deliver on the promise that we've been talking about. Having that end-to-end visibility and being able to see. So I'm really excited about our new release coming out here in a really near future.
And that's a release that goes to all current customers. Of course, it's not an add-on to it. It's all built into the core product.
Oh yeah, yep. You get it with your subscription, and you're off to the races with all the new great capabilities.
Excellent. Well, that's very exciting. Congratulations, and excited to hear how folks receive that and leverage those new capabilities. That's fantastic. Hey, I wonder, we were talking about the evolution of Agile and its growth and maturity and, variations it might have taken on. As you look at value stream management, if we want to think that of as a segment of the industry or a discipline within the industry, what does value stream management need to do? Where does it need to go next as it matures and develops and grows?
It needs to go back to what it was intended to be and leave behind all the marketing stuff that people have tried to do to make it their own. It needs to go back to being all the steps and processes, both value added and non-value added, to bring software the waiting arms of the customer. It needs to go be that, not be all this other things that marketers like myself have made it become. Once you remove the complexity and then put it back to its simplicity, it's great sense. And that's the same with Agile, by the way. Once you remove the complexity of somebody trying to take control and marketing it, it becomes pretty simple. Work in iterations, deliver value every other week, right? You know, leading Agile used to say 3 things, right? Backlogs, teams, working software. And, you know, getting back to the simplicity of what it is really meant to be will get value stream management industry, I think, moving forward again. Because it's getting confused between value management and value stream management. So that's my thoughts on that is getting to the simplicity will let us really embrace it easier.
Well, that's not gray hair we have. That's wisdom that we have, by the way. So that's at least I'm gonna claim that. But
I concur with you. I must have a nice filter. It's looking pretty gray and nice there. I didn't trim that at all.
I don't know what they're doing there in Nashville, but you're looking good.
I know.
Whatever the water, whatever the air, whatever you're doing.
Must be all that singing I'm doing.
That's singing. Yeah. Well, send us a recording. You know, I was thinking about, you know, there's so many things in you can point to in sports or life or whatever. So many times they're going back to not the basics, but the fundamentals, right? You think about blocking and tackling in football, or you can pick any topic, you know, any hobby, any discipline.
Right.
Those things are still true, and they still have to be there. Because if you co-opt a term like value stream management to make it whatever you need to make it to fund your project or to get your product in someone's door when it's not really in there, they're going to see the false prophets, right? They're going to see the products that aren't really value stream management products.
Right.
You have to see those core components there, or you kind of say, what is this really? Why are we doing this? Is it real?
What am I trying to achieve, right? I mean, if it's value stream management, it's simple. I'm trying to remove waste. I'm trying to, you know, remove waste from my methods and processes so that I can deliver better value quicker to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to defer it into something else, you lose the simplicity of just doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same with blocking and tackling. I played football as a boy, and we did that with exercise every day, blocking and tackling, right? Blocking and tackling. And we were, you know, division champions. The coach, he'd tell you, he would have us blocking and tackling all day long, right? So
defense wins games, right?
It does. It does. Yes.
Great defense.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, and those kind of things are something you do using that analogy. You don't do that when you're, you know, in their first or second year or JV, right? That is true whether you're, you know, Hall of Fame professional in the team that you're on, you look more like a scrum than a football team moving down the field, you know, in Pee Wee football. to overuse that analogy, I'm completely.
I don't think I played Pee Wee football, but you know the professionals get out there in Florida every year, right? And they practice all the time.
Yeah,
throwing the ball, getting it out there, timing, structure. It's the same with this stuff, right? Get back to the basics of what value stream management is, understand lean principles, understand systems thinking. And the next thing you know, you'll be much more efficient in being able to deliver better methods and processes to solving problems in your company.
Mm-hmm.
That's value stream management.
Yep. And you're focusing on the right things too, not getting distracted with shiny objects and other problems, right?
I've got a bunch of people all around me here distracting me, but yes, true.
Well, I have to compliment you before we go. I don't know what Wi-Fi detector you have, but you've got dang good Wi-Fi working there. Usually that's the hard part, is like, how do I get a connection? I get an email, more or less do a video.
I know. Well, I guess it's it is. It did work out really well, didn't it?
Those people in Nashville know how to put together a good Wi-Fi network for the show.
That must be it. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thanks for checking in with us, giving a perspective. You know, of course, what's happening at Agile 2022 and what's happening at Connect All. tell our audience where they can go to learn more about Connect All and the new release that's coming out.
Ray, it's always connectall.com. You can reach me at Lance Knight at connectall.com if you ever need anything. And Mitch, it's always my pleasure talking to you.
It's a great pleasure. I enjoyed very much. Well, safe travels coming back to. Glad you got there safely, and have a good rest of the time that you're there. And I'm sure, I know when I'm going to those things now, it's just so good to reconnect people, and the pace at which communications and kind of furthering things, the work that you're doing, your business just happens. You see the value of being in person. It's
so do. It is.
Okay. All right, Lance, look forward to next time. Be sure and visit the Connect All site, and we look forward to our next dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Emily Arnott, who's community manager for Blameless, and we're going to be talking about reliability insights. And the first thing we're going to do is have Emily explain, what do we mean by reliability insights? Because, that can mean a lot of things for a lot of different folks. So let's jump in. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. So reliability insights, that's kind of a general term we like to use for both a feature of our platform and then kind of the motivating ideas behind it, which is, in a nutshell, you should be able to easily understand the reliability of your system. So engineers, they like to get into the nitty gritty. They like to look into the details of each and every individual incident. But if you're working up the chain to your managers, to the C-level, to your investment boards, they just want something that's easy to parse. Is the system generally reliable? What kind of outliers have we been having? Are our ideas working to make things better? And that's what Reliability Insights gives you. So our feature is a collection of customizable dashboards and tiles that can draw from all sorts of monitoring data throughout your system or retrospective reports you're giving your incidents. And the overall goal is to just have one place you can look and say, yep, things are looking good, or uh-oh, maybe some changes need to be made.
Do you think that we are more focused on reliability these days because we are shifting to things like microservices and cloud native applications? And the assumption is those things are more reliable, but we don't absolutely know that for certain. So are we looking for more metrics and, proof of reliability?
I would say those things can be more reliable, but they aren't necessarily more reliable right away. As you start adding cloud native architecture, as you switch to kind of a microservices distributed model, the more third-party integrations you have, those are things that can help you, but it also makes it much more complex to figure out where are problems coming from, how are things looking overall. So I think you're totally right that the potential is there, and we kind of need to rise to the occasion by using tooling and getting these insights to kind of compensate for that additional complication. I would say reliability is also certainly more important than ever as we switch to kind of like a digital first economy where having a reliable, robust digital platform isn't necessarily now a competitive differentiator. It's now just the floor. It's just the expectation. Nobody's going to even consider you unless you have something that they can count on 99% of the time to work.
Are there a set of best practices for tracking reliability? Are there metrics in particular that people should be looking for, and what do they look like?
So you'll find it varies quite a bit from company to company, but usually you can kind of start with the same building blocks. So something like MTTX metrics, they don't really tell you the complete story, but looking at your mean time to detect an incident, then your mean time to respond to that incident, and then of course the mean time that it takes to actually implement a working fix and figure out the root cause of the problem. Those are kind of the foundation of the sort of things you're going to be looking at. And then for each individual organization, you can start customizing that with parsing down the metrics to, okay, what's the mean time to detect for this type of service? What's the mean time to detect when we're integrating this third-party tool? And that starts giving you a little more of a nuanced picture that can actually help you identify oh, geez, all of our slowest, laggiest incidents are coming from this part of the code base. That creates a problem. So there's no one size fits all solution, but starting to just kind of look at these fundamental timelines across all of your incidents and then narrowing it down into kind of more problematic areas is generally an approach that'll work for everyone.
How predictive can all this get? I mean, ultimately, I think I'd like to get to the point where I'm going to get a message that says, hey, here are 3 things that are likely to get you fired, and maybe you should do something about that before it happens.
Well, we caution against it being too much of a, solitary guidepost. It should always be contextualized by what was happening during those particular incidents. So let's say you see some big outlier and at first you're kind of panicking. It's important to look into, all the mitigating circumstances. Was there another incident happening at the same time? Was half your team away on some in-person retreat or something? There's always kind of a story behind the story. So it's not like we're saying, look at one graph and then use that to decide the future of the company. It's more like this is what gets the discussion going. That you can see these kind of outliers, you can see a general trend, and then you can say, okay, that's worth digging into. Let's see why that's happening. So it's not so much that you can ever say, oh, these are the 3 things that can get me fired right away, but it can start having that discussion. And you can certainly think, okay, I'm not going to miss something that's that big of a red flag. That's always going to be highlighted somewhere in the data, and then we can take a look at it.
We hear a lot about chaos engineering these days. Should I just deliberately break something to figure out what my reliability is? I know that goes against the grain of a lot of folks, but is that what we need to do?
Chaos engineering is certainly like a very cutting edge philosophy, and it certainly has benefits, but it's not something you can just kind of dive into willy-nilly. It's got to be really deliberate. You have to know what you're looking for. You have to have your experiment area set up in such a way that it, as closely as possible, mirrors your actual production environment. You don't want to fall into the trap of running a test that ends up not actually teaching you about how things would actually go. You have to be really holistic. You have to incorporate, not just the test in the vacuum, but think about how would people actually be responding if it was real? Are people going to be unavailable? Is there going to be conflicting priorities? So it's a real challenge getting that to be one-to-one between the chaos engineering experiment and reality. And then it's tough to really make definitive conclusions. So our philosophy is kind of like, you're probably already experiencing incidents. Nobody's system is perfect. You're probably actually generating quite a lot of data just from the things that are naturally going wrong. So we see that as a very important first step to start capturing all of that learning before you start needing to deliberately do chaos experiments and interject this artificial data on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think AI has a role to play in all this as we go forward? We are collecting a lot of data, and of course, the minute anybody collects data, somebody wants to build a model. So do you think that that's in our future, or is that here now?
That's a very fascinating question. We are seeing something that you kind of see the umbrella term AI ops. And it's one of those terms that sounds very exciting and everybody rushes to call themselves AI ops. And then you drill into it and it's kind of difficult to pin down exactly what the AI is doing, exactly how it's helping. You're right, though, in that anytime there's a lot of data being generated and you can start to look for trends, you want to kind of use the great statistical mind of the computer to get ahead of those trends. And I think there's certainly a lot of potential there. One thing that's interesting is, do you know about GitHub is doing that like coding assistant thing now?
Sure.
Where it'll help you kind of predict what code you might be typing by looking at all of the other GitHub repositories. So there's definitely very bold steps being taken in like computers can help us design systems and not just kind of execute systems. So I'm certainly curious to see where that goes. But like everything else, I think in the short term, it's going to be a cause of unreliability before it becomes a solution to unreliability. That this is just another complexity. This is just another kind of black box that's maybe difficult to look into. And that it really only reinforces the need to have a really solid foundation of reliability before you start experimenting with AI assistance on top of that.
So we may discover one day that the code we're writing is not reliable before we put it in production, but we got a ways to go just yet. What is the role of SREs as we go forward? I mean, are these folks really engineers, or are they kind of just the newest flavor of an IT administrator that we're giving ourselves a little self-promotion and raise for? And what do you think will be the role between, what an SRE does and what an IT administrator used to do, and what's the balance?
That's a really fascinating question. And this is something that certainly every SRE will have a different take on. Everybody sees their role a little bit differently, but I think that's actually a strength of SREs rather than an ambiguity that's going to slow them down. Personally, I would like to see SREs step further and further into the left of the cycle, get earlier and earlier into development. One of my colleagues, Jake England, made a really good comment once that he said, SREs these days are kind of like mechanics. They fix cars when they break down, but he wants to see SREs be like civil engineers. They're helping design the motorways. They're helping make things so that cars don't break down so often. So I'd like to see more of a big picture role for SREs. So in terms of like IT administration, that again is more reactive. It's more dealing with incidents as they arise, coming up with policies for incident response and things like that. But SREs, I think, have the opportunity to get involved in the actual design of the code and be thinking reliability first, right from the initial design specs. I think that really kind of opens up our understanding of reliability, that it's not just something that happens afterwards. It's not just something that you're scrambling to put out fires, but something really proactive that doesn't catch fire in the first place.
All right. What do you think the state of observability is as it relates to reliability? Using your civil engineering metaphor, we used to drive down the highway with a paper map and kind of hope to figure out which end of this was going to work out correctly. And it was a 50-50 proposition. Today I have a GPS, and, for the most part, I get close to where I want to be. And usually it's the last, 2 or 3 miles that are a mess, but at least I'm in the neighborhood. What do you think is going to happen with observability and reliability? Are these two things kind of joined at the hip?
I really like your analogy here. And if I can extend it even further, I think our risk these days is that we're building a lot of tunnels. And maybe in the tunnel, you feel like, well, I just have to kind of go straight, but you've lost signal. You can't check your GPS anymore. And as our system gets more and more microservice-based, more and more third-party based, there's more of these dark tunnels that we're just kind of trusting all of our data is flowing through. So I think observability right now is a bigger challenge than ever. And that it is linked at the hip to reliability. If you can't see what's happening in your service, if you can't take its pulse and check its health, then you don't really have a sense of what's reliable, what isn't, and where to make improvements. It's a challenge, but the tooling and the best practices and people's commitment to it, I think, are keeping pace with that challenge. I think one thing that's going to be interesting is, do you know the idea of kind of like white box observability, white box monitoring, where you're kind of just dealing with your system as if you were a user, you're making requests and seeing how they go. I think as systems become more complex, that becomes more important because it becomes more linked to the actual user experience. Like, let's say you can detect some sort of anomaly deep within your system. That is a cause for concern, but it's not as an immediate concern as a user just saying the service is down for whatever reason. I cannot use the search. I cannot log in. That's where your priority actually lies in making your users happy. So I think this idea of observability in the end, you want to see through the eyes of your user. You want to empathize with what they're trying to do and what obstacles they're having. It kind of simplifies the process and it arrives at, the problems that are going to have the biggest business impact.
All right. So not all my friends are as reliable as each other, and shifting metaphors a little bit here. Will we have the same idea about applications and an understanding that, I still love my friends regardless of how reliable they are. I still love my applications regardless of how reliable they are. I just know what to do about the fact that one's less reliable than the other, and we're going to have to come to terms with that.
That's a very interesting perspective, because we always kind of think of, if somebody has a bad experience, they're going to look to a competitor. So the idea of someone being a little resilient to that personally and thinking, okay, it's down today, but usually it's up. But I think what's important is that when you have that sensation, it's because you already have a lot of trust, right? Like, these people are already your friends. Sure, they might flake out occasionally, but there must have been something there to build up your trust that they're not just going to flake out every time going forward. And they're not going to flake out in an emergency, right? Like, it's one thing for a friend to say, you know what, I'm skipping brunch today. Oops, I drank too much last night. Everybody's had that experience. But if you say, I need a ride to the hospital, and the same friend is going, well, so it's kind of about what expectations we have and what's critical to us in the moment. So I think you're right that we need to have a very holistic picture of how users expect reliability from their apps. But in the end, it's a friend that flakes out all the time isn't going to be a friend for long.
Or at least you'll know what to expect. And that's part of the issue right there. I think, if I got rid of all my friends and applications that were 100% unreliable or even half unreliable, I might not have many left. But at the end of the day, at least I know where they are and I know who to count on and what to call for in what situation. Emily, thanks for sharing your insights today, and thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
All right. And back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Matthew Gorje, who is CEO for VigiTrust, and they have put together a massive advisory board. And the idea here is to tackle some of the more pressing issues in cybersecurity. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
There are a lot of advisory boards out there addressing cybersecurity. So what makes this one different, and what are the goals and ambitions?
Yeah, so the reason why this one is different is because it's aimed at addressing one key topic, which is that if you do your job as a CISO or as a risk manager the right way, nobody knows your name. Whereas if something goes wrong, you become public enemy number one within minutes. And so, about 10, 12 years ago, I started thinking about getting CISOs together and getting people that were in charge of risk together in a judgment-free area where in an environment where they could talk about what works, but also what doesn't work. So you're right, there are a lot of very good platforms out there, and some of which we work with, like ISACA, ISC Squared, ISSA, IAPP, and other platforms. Most of them, though, are focusing on best practices, providing you with guidance that's been written by experts and so on. The VigiTrust Global Advisory Board doesn't actually do that. It's more like an experience sharing and opinion sharing platform where we bring together, generally speaking, a board of directors, C-level folks, so CISOs, chief risk officers, chief legal officers, chief learning officers, law enforcement, FBI, Interpol, French police, Irish police, UK police, NYPD, and a few others, as well as academia. So we like to think that we bring all of the stakeholders together, as opposed to other platforms that are very good in their own right, but focus on assessors or auditors or technical people.
And what exactly is VigiTrust? I don't think people are familiar with you guys. So where do you fit in this role?
Yeah, so VigiTrust, from a commercial entity perspective, is an organization that's been going for nearly 20 years. And the first 15 years of the business, we were essentially security assessors and trainers. In and around 2012, we started productizing our training into an e-learning offering. And then 2017, 2018, we pivoted the business into what it is today, which is a provider of SaaS-based governance risk compliance solutions. So we've got an award-winning tool called VG1, which allows our clients to prepare for, validate, and manage continuous compliance with about 100 security frameworks. The advisory board is part of the group of companies under the VG Trust umbrella, but it's an independent think tank in that there's no commercial agenda with it, with nothing to sell. And in fact, membership of the advisory board is completely free. And so far, we've managed to remain vendor agnostic. Now, that said, we have some chief innovation people, research people from vendors that come in and talk about what we do research on, but it's not a commercial platform to sell firewalls, GRC, training, or anything like that.
So what's your sense so far as, and there are a lot of issues out there, but what is the one or two things that are keeping cybersecurity people up at night? What's the primary thing that they're really focused on versus all the long list of things that they can be focused on?
Yeah, I mean, if they start looking at everything, they'll never sleep. But the reality is that right now there's 5 or 6 key topics that matter to our members, and I would say to the security people, generally speaking. So the first one is the evolution of standards and regulations. So 2022 is a very busy year for that, with PCI 4.0, the update to the Indian Data Protection Bill, with the UK going its own direction and completely changing the UK GDPR, and which is moving away from mainstream GDPR, and NIS2, for instance. And then in the US, a number of executive orders and a bill that is about to be discussed around federal privacy. So there's a very busy environment. The second thing that keeps people awake, I think, is ransomware, because of what's happened over the last few years, and because of the fact that ransomware attacks, unfortunately, still come through very standard vectors like phishing, social engineering, and so on, and result in attacks becoming much more personal in terms of the impact. So yes, you look at Colonial Pipeline, where they're not hacking private citizens, but there is an impact on access to energy. You look at the health service executive in Ireland, they're not hacking your local GP, but your local medical practitioner, but they are hacking the hospitals, meaning that you can't actually get access to care. So the impact is very much personal. The other thing that obviously we have to talk about, the elephant in the room here, and it's the geopolitical changes that are being started because of Russia invading Ukraine. So, if you look at data made public by companies like CrowdStrike, we can see that there was a lot of cyber attacks against Ukraine from Russia in the months leading up to the physical attack. And to some extent, having that information, it was quite clear that there was an extreme likelihood of a physical attack. What's now very clear is that any country or organization that publicly makes it clear that they're against Russia is opening itself to a lot more attacks for the second half of 2022 and 2023, and primarily with ransomware. So we also have that complex geopolitical ecosystem that's affecting everybody worldwide. And that's one thing that we discussed. The next topic, I think, is the talent skills gap and the shortage in talent in cyber, which kind of goes together with diversity and inclusion in cyber. So, according to different surveys, we went from having 11% women in cyber 3 to 4 years ago to about 24% in the last studies published at the end of last year, which is good progress, but it's still not enough. And also from a cultural diversity, we're seeing that the cybersecurity groups tend to not mix cultures, right? And so if we are not mixing cultures, we're not mixing experience, we're not mixing ways to deal with stress and to deal with crisis. And again, we're missing out on opportunities. So, we talk about all of those topics. Another couple of topics that are very big at the moment would be collaboration between law enforcement and the private sector, which of course you need to foster those relationships before you have an incident, because once you have the incident, it's a little bit too late. And again, you're missing out on opportunities to understand how they work, and they're missing out on opportunities to understand how your business works. And then finally, there's the protection of the most vulnerable on the internet. And generally speaking, we talk about young people, but one area within the demographics where we need to do a lot more is for the much older generations that are being targeted and that are trying their best to stay in touch with technology, but yet don't understand the risks.
Do you guys think that this is a battle that can ultimately be won, or is it a matter of endurance and perseverance, but we'll never actually win it? It's just about minimizing our losses.
So, there's a saying in the industry that says that there's only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that don't know that they've been hacked. There's also a lot of talk about the fact that security from industry and government perspective, we need to get it right all the time, whereas the bad guys only need to get it right once. And one of the things that we need to understand is that the skills level of attackers is actually going down. They don't actually need to be computer gurus in order to launch a ransomware attack. They can actually buy it as a service on the dark web. And so what that means is that somebody with bad intentions doesn't need to be a computer geek in order to attack you. On the other hand, from the other side, a large organization has a huge risk surface, and they need the best technology, the best people, and the best processes in order to minimize that risk. Can you minimize the risk 100%? Absolutely not. There's no silver bullet. If you want to do business with the outside world, you have to open up. The question is, how much do you open up and to what level? And so you'll always end up with a residual risk. And there's only a few things you can do with risk, generally speaking. You can ignore risk, which you should never do. You can try and transfer risk, which you can do to an extent operationally and potentially by getting cyber insurance, although that's another topic, it's getting harder to get it. What you can't do is offload the legal responsibility of that risk. So the only solution you have is really to mitigate the risk to a level that's acceptable to your organization. And that depends really on the board's appetite for risk with regards to cyber.
Mm-hmm. Do you think as we go forward that AI will help level the playing field a little bit for these folks, or is there just too much hype around it, but it doesn't really deliver on the promise?
So to date, it's embryonic, so it's not exactly delivering on the promise just yet. There are some very interesting proofs of concept going on out there. One thing that's for sure is that if you use AI to try and second guess or to try and preempt the attacks, you can do it faster than you do today. The challenge, though, is that AI is also being used by attackers to try and map out the vulnerabilities a little bit quicker. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game. And for now, I think the jury is out. The other issue is that AI is not regulated. Well, generally speaking, not regulated. There are a few standards out there. There's some initial regulation in various parts of the world, but it's all based on ethical use of AI, and it's based on data privacy and data concerns. It's not actually based on the value add of AI for the cybersecurity industry to stop attacks. And that's one thing that as security professionals, we need to push to government.
Do you think that we need to collectively band together more than we do? It seems like the bad guys share a lot more knowledge than we do in the good guy side of the equation. But is part of this issue here that we need to find a way to combine our investments, because otherwise we're involved in this cybersecurity arms race that no individual company on its own can sustain.
Yeah, and you're right. There's a feeling out there that the bad guys collaborate a lot better than we do. There's also a name and shame culture. Oh, this company got hacked. The CISO wasn't doing their job correctly. They didn't take security seriously. But at the end of the day, I think that we need to collaborate. Like, for instance, the VG Trust Global Advisory Board has partnerships with various ISACA chapters, ISSA chapters, and so on. What we need to do is we need to remove the stigma of being hacked is a failure. Of course, it's a failure. Something failed somewhere, whether it was a process, whether it was a technical solution not in place or not configured the right way, human error, but it could also be zero-day attack that seriously could not have been stopped because it was brand new. And so where I think that we also need to make an effort is in how we deal with crisis. There's always going to be a new type of attack because we keep augmenting the risk surface, right? So the Internet of Things is a great example of that. Right now on you probably have 2 to 3 connected devices. When you go home, you'll probably have 15 to 20. And so you've built your own infrastructure and it has its own critical components. So now as a bad actor, I can hack into your home if it's not protected and use that to piggyback on your company laptop and then go back into the company. Whereas before, I would have had to literally know where that laptop was or where to send the attack. So we're making it easier, right, for bad guys. And so we all need to work together. I think that there's also a collective responsibility, right, from businesses and government to provide Joe Public that's working for them or that's a citizen in their city to be more security aware. You can't drive without a driver's license. Why should you use the free connectivity in my city if you're not going to take it seriously and you're not going to behave properly and you're not going to protect the devices? There's a school of thought that says that we need to empower the citizens to make the right decisions. From a business perspective, we see that year after year on 2 occasions, in October for Cyber Awareness Month and in January for Global Privacy Day, where companies really try to push out their security message to their employees. And that's great, and that's very commendable, and it should be done. However, it should also be done with the what's in it for me for the employee. Because if you say to them, I'm going to empower you to protect your own infrastructure at home, your own connected infrastructure, then when they're home and they use their connected devices, they're going to be more secure. And therefore, when they go back to the office, they'll be more secure. And it kind of snowballs into that kind of responsibility or awareness around security. And I think we have security professionals have to impart that knowledge to the board, and the board needs to sponsor those initiatives so that we can all work together.
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it almost sounds like it's not so much that we're losing because of the tools and advances in technology, but rather just the attack surface has gotten too big to defend. And so maybe we need to look at how we're applying IT as much as how we're securing it.
You're right. I mean, I often talk about ecosystem diagrams, and people ask me, Matthew, what's an ecosystem diagram? What's the difference with a network diagram? And I say to them, well, a network diagram is a technical diagram that shows you your logical and your hardware and network assets within your environment. An ecosystem diagram is showing you where you do business and with whom. And once you map this out, you can say, I'm exchanging data from that area to that area. It's encrypted, it's not. I'm using multi-factor authentication. I'm using IDS, IPS, or whatever. But I can't protect something I'm not aware of. So I need to map my ecosystem at home, at work, in a city, at a state level, at a national level, and also international level. And as we keep extending that risk surface, we also need to extend the process to secure it. And so what I mean by that is that you really need to ensure that you use technology the right way. I often offend technical people by saying that the technical part of security is the easiest thing to sort out because the technology is here. We just need to configure it the right way. And very often it's a human problem or it's a policy problem. But I also think we need to recognize that as population grows, more and more people are on the internet. As we have less and less unbanked people, more and more people do online banking. So all of that risk surface is going to continue to grow. Where we can win the race, I believe, is by continuing to educate people. And it really needs to start from the board level. You need the board to invite the CISOs and the compliance people to the board meetings on a regular basis. You need them to allow security people to translate cybersecurity risks into business risks, because boards, they deal with risks every day: financial risk, HR, growth, tax, legal. Cyber is just an additional risk. It's not that they don't want to deal with it. It's mostly that we don't translate it into a business discussion.
I guess in some cases, we are still our own worst enemies. Hey, Matthew, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.